All right, welcome everyone. Hopefully we have don't have as much disconnections, whatever. Again, my internet is a high usage here today, but we have a commentary stream for jcarmody simul, so I'm super excited for that. If there are any issues or whatever, do let me know. I think I got everything right. We did last minute handicaps for players, so I'm working on finishing that up. But the game should be beginning here soon. And hopefully my broadcast will pick up the games as they begin and we can get on with that. So we'll see how going here. I just have a few more things I got to do uh, because we had a bunch of last minute stuff as I thought might happen and it did. Let's see. Here we go. So hope everyone is doing well. I'm looking forward to the simul. We have a lot of players here. I'm pretty sure we broke the record. I did not get a final head count. I'm pretty sure we're over 20. This should be an incredible simul for Jay Carmi. He's going to have their work cut out for them for sure. And we'll see what happens. Get my last few things here. Excuse me. And I am on a new computer, so we might have a little bit of an issue with some of the settings and stuff that I haven't gotten totally done yet. But hopefully everyone can hear me and things like that. And I do have the chat thing open. I'm just working on getting the player. I think they started. Thanks, Warvold. I hope you have a good game. Appears to be a lot of fun. I will be talking about the games and commentary. So if you are actively playing a game, do wait until after your game finishes to watch my stream, or you can watch the video on demand afterwards when the stream is over if you want to catch what maybe you've missed. But I will be actively talking about the games as best I can. We have a lot of games, so it could take a little while for that one. Um, and I'm waiting to get the broadcast. It doesn't look like it's pulled the games up just yet, unfortunately. So I'm hoping my thing worked correctly. It was supposed to. Let me double check. Maybe I have to do the time different here. Let's see about this. And see if I can get the thing, because there are so many games. If I manually entered into the broadcast, it could take like forever. It says connected to 31 users, nothing new. Do we have the, oh, nope, here we got the game, so maybe we are good. So we'll see if the games populate. Looks like the simul games did. We have 28 playing. Oh my goodness, Jay Carmody. Oh, you have your work cut out for you. My. Wow. All right. Well, there's just a few more things that we are going to do here while they get the things up. Mainly, I need the board to fetch for me. It's not fetching the games just yet, but it usually the broadcast takes a few minutes before it brings the games into the playing field here. So we'll see how all that goes. And I might have missed a couple of these, but we're going to do what we can here because there was a lot of technical stuff right at the end, people with entries and getting things like that. And I knew there was going to be a little bit of that, but it was a little more than I expected. I probably should have asked for help with getting some of this back end stuff with Jay Carmony's simul, but I did not expect all these people to play. This is so cool. So excited for Jay Carmody to have so many people wanting to take him on with the Elo Stilo. I think almost everyone took the Elo Stilo handicaps. So that's why we had a lot of extra handicaps going on. And it's still not picking up the games. So I tried a new thing on the broadcast where I put all the usernames, and they're supposed to pick up the games when the usernames are playing. So I don't know if it's going to take a little longer to do it. Hopefully, I don't have to manually add 28 game links in here, but I guess we will do that if it comes down to it. So I'll give it another minute to show up, and then if it doesn't, well, we'll make it happen. The other longer way. And let's see, we get Let's see if I can do here. No, still not pulling in. I wanted to make sure I told it to pull it correctly, so I thought, well, maybe that's the issue. All right, so get that in. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna have to manually enter these, aren't I? Okay, well, we will we'll do it the long harder way. And hello to everyone. Yep, I see everyone there. Yeah, I'm just trying to navigate my new computer too, which is having some things are in little different locations and other things I realize, oh, I don't actually have. So I'm a little slow on pulling some of these things in, but we'll get the game links in here and do it the slow way so we don't miss a ton of stuff here. Let's see, so we'll need to switch this to game IDs, and here we go to the simul page, and I will pull in these game IDs. So let's do it that way. Let's see here. Got two of them, and keeping track of all these game links in here is going to be something too. So we'll see. I'll have to look at the username thing because I thought that was going to be really great and save me a lot of time potentially putting all these links in. And now I'm a little disappointed that it didn't work because manually entering all these game links, especially with so many games, like, okay, that's going to eat up a little bit of time that I don't necessarily have with all these games covering. But super excited that we had such a incredible turnout for jcarmody's simul. I don't know how many people knowing will check it. Once I get these game links in here, we'll quickly look at the Elo Stilo handicaps for a lot of the players that have them. In fact, I didn't even get all of them in. So there's going to be a couple that are in there that are missing, unfortunately, but we'll cover the ones that we do. They have some crazy unique ones in here. I thought some of them were quite hilarious. Others were just tough. So I think some of these players here are going to have a really tough time meeting their handicaps. So we'll go in through there. Some ones are easier than others. Let's see. Did I get Mennonites in? I don't know. We'll do it again just in case. And yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. So we got Mennonite, and then we got this guy. Wow. Yeah, this is going to take me a little while. I guess in the future, when I do a simul, I'm going to have to ask for help for these type of things to put them in. And if I can't do the username, especially because 28 games is a lot. So we're getting there. And the problem is there's so many games, it's actually kind of hard to keep track of which ones you're getting in or not. So we might even miss one, unfortunately. So if you are catching one that maybe you don't see in the game thing, do let me know. Okay, let's put these in because we got quite a bit. And then try to get some more in. I mean, this is incredible how many people showed up here. You know what? I think I might even have to do it a little bit differently. I just thought of it. I can go to the direct game screen link maybe. We can do it that way. Maybe not. Actually, maybe not. Okay. Okay. Nope. Not gonna be able to do it the way I wanted. Wow. A lot of these. Okay, we got these in. I'll submit that. Incredible. I think I got almost all of them. Fingers crossed. And my apologies for the delay here because I was not anticipating this or having to do all of this. Definitely not while on the stream. So took a little bit more time than I was thinking it was going to be. I don't know if I did this one. Okay, so let's see how many games we got in here. That might help me a little bit. Woo, we got a lot of them in here. Okay, so, oop, nope, don't want to do that. All right. So the only thing I need to do is get rid of this game. It's an old one. All right, and then we're going to do playing. We'll pull up this guy. There's the game. All right. Hi, how you doing? Yeah, sorry about guys. It took me a lot longer to get all of this going out here, but we're getting there. And it's just a little bit longer than I was hoping for, but hey, we are almost there. Let's see here. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to miss a lot of this game. All right. And then we just need to get one more thing in here. All right. Okay, so let's quickly go to our handicap line. It's a lot of players with all their handicaps, a little probably harder to see for some people. I know it's a little harder for me to even see on there, but we see all sorts of different kind of handicaps, some crazy handicap lines for people having to do. For example, we have let's see, I think it's alt control can't move their bishop after the 20th move. We have Sakal who can only capture opponent's pawns with their pawns. Mennonite is your pawns must move 2 squares on their first move. Tommy's is if you can take a piece or pawn, you have to take the piece, not the pawn. Uh, we have Mr. Scribbles who decided to take two. He has you must make four pawn moves in your first five moves, or you lose both bishops. If you lose both bishops, you have to resign. So there's a lot of different handicaps going in here, but let's jump into the games if we can here, if I got all the settings right. Well, first one we'll jump into is with Duty 5521, and they opened up with knight f3, knight f6, g3, g6. Okay, bishop d2, bishop d2. Okay, so both of them are just fianchettoing at the moment here. And let's see if I'm going to struggle remembering who has what. Duty's handicap is the queen only moves like a rook. So jcarmody doesn't know this, but Duty's queen is actually just a rook. So that's going to be interesting to see how he plays it out there. Maybe he'll plan to make moves that doesn't give that away, that he can't move it diagonally or try to for as long as he can. So that's going to be an interesting one over there. Let's jump to King Life. King Life opened up with e4-2, but let's jump in real quick and see what was King's Life? King's Life is the king can only move if it is to capture a piece or a pawn. Wow, so that's going to be, yeah, he's got the one that's really hard for him. So the king for King Life is not able to move unless it's making a capture. So that could really make some interesting ideas with that. Okay, I have that issue again where there is an engine and it shouldn't be on, and I forgot how to do that. So I got to take that off. There we go. Don't know why all of a sudden it starts doing that. But let's take that off. So knight f3, bishop g, h3. Okay, and again, the king can't castle for king 12 life. And so where we normally might see a castle move, the king is staying in the center here. And eventually this might tip off jcarmody like, why is he not castling where he should obviously be castling? And that might tip him off to maybe how he can try to take an advantage. But he doesn't know. Let me get the sync on here. He doesn't know if the. There we go. I didn't have sync, so you weren't seeing the moves. That is my bad. Let's try that again to make sure that it's live on the board. There we go. Okay. It just takes a little technical stuff going on here, but that's all right. We'll work through it. First time for everything, right? Okay, so that is going to be the King's Life one here, and at the moment, this is where the position ends. Let's go to Scrooge. I remember Scrooge's. Scrooge handicap is their knights cannot move backwards at all. They can only move forwards at a time, so they can only make forward progress. They can never go backwards. So we'll see how Scrooge plays this position here, where they are going to have to be careful with their knights move because it can never go back. And you can see he's moving tons of pawns and no knights at the moment. So that'll be interesting as well to see how that game goes. I'm going to jump to the next one here because I want to at least cover the initial ones with the initial moves in this one. Sakal is the one, I believe, that has to only capture his opponent's pawns with his own pawns. So we see a position so far, not many moves quite being played, but it's getting there. So many players have joined the simul that jcarmody is actually having a ton of time. An hour, what's it? 1 hour and 42 minutes here, almost 2 hours worth of time. But with 28 games, those times are just gonna drain so quickly for them, especially after they get out of the opening phase. Checkmate Insurance. What was Checkmate Insurance handicap? Their handicap was your pawns always capture pawns when they can, even if en passant. Oh, okay. So if offered a pawn exchange, Checkmate Insurance has to honor that. And let's see how that plays out with Checkmate Insurance bringing the pawns out early on. But jcarmody not attacking any of the pawns quite yet until here. Oh, We have to take the pawn, and so Checkmate Insurance did take that pawn because they are obligated to. So that's where that game is standing currently right now. Silk the Wander, if I recall, his rooks. Let's check Silk the Wander. What was his handicap? It was a good one. Rooks can't move when threatened. That's what it was. Rooks can't move if they are under threat. Okay, so this will probably play later in the game, not so much early on, but they aren't able to move when they're under threat. So imagine a rook end game where your rook can't move if it's being attacked by something. That could change a lot. And it looks like perhaps Silk the Wanderer playing aggressively with the h4 move and maybe trying to find a way to exchange this rook, maybe for a knight, just to get the rook off the board and remove that handicap of theirs possibly. Okay, let's do Tommy's. Tommy's was if you can capture a piece or a pawn, you have to capture the piece, not the pawn. So I believe that was his handicap. And so in the game, we get this opening here. And Queen D2 is the first one. So far, they don't they can capture a pawn or they can capture a piece, but they have to decide between the two. So it's only when uh, two different pieces can be captured at the same time. So right now, he doesn't have to capture a piece or a pawn yet, but if he gets to a situation where he's, say, attacking, like let's say his bishop's here, he's obligated to capture the piece. If I understood it correctly, let me see here. Yeah, if you can take a piece or a pawn, you have to take the piece. Yes. So if he's given the option, then he has to take the piece, not the pawn. And we get the castling queen side. All right, let's jump to Mennonite's game real quick and see how Mennonite is doing. Now, Mennonite, what was his? His was your pawns must move 2 squares on their first move. Okay, so no matter what, the first pawn move with any pawn of his has to move 2 squares. So any pawn move he makes initially has to be 2 squares advanced. And yes, he is going for the big pawns early on. So trying to play it more like a normal opening really at the moment right now. So we'll see what happens in the later uh, game here when other pawns need to move because he won't be able to move it 1 square. So for example, the pawn can't go here because it has to move 2 squares on its first turn. So you won't see like a fianchetto type situation or the h6, a6 type of moves because of that handicap. So that'll change the play a little bit. My son never called me. My son never called me. Took 2 handicaps upon request. And a lot of them actually, guys, they did harder handicaps. They requested tougher handicaps than were offered. So for my son never calls me, their handicap is your queen only moves like a bishop, and your first 5 move, or you go 5 moves at any point in the game without a capture. So he has to play at some point in the game, make 5 moves without capturing anything in a row. So that is going to be an interesting one for him, especially with the handicap of the queen only moving like a bishop. So, how does he play? Very conservatively, understandably. He wants to get those 5 moves without a capture out right away. So, he has met that goal. So, tick off that handicap. Now, he just has to play the queen only moving like a bishop. And so, we're going to see how that plays out as well. And after pawn takes c3, we get this position here. So a very interesting position with the queen only being able to move like the light squared bishop in this game. So very interesting as well with that one. Let's go to Warvold's game and see what they have. Now, Warvold, let me pull up his handicap is he cannot checkmate without 3 knights being on the board, which means he is going to have to promote some. So that will be an interesting one for them. So let's see how they open the game. So they cannot checkmate unless they have 3 knights on the board. So that'll be probably a little bit later issue. So he's probably going to have to play an end game to promote for the 3 knights before delivering a checkmate. So it could definitely change how you approach this game, making sure you have enough pieces or pawns that can promote to knights or avoid trading your knights as well. And the current position is this. So a lot of exchanges. Warvold definitely looking like they're wanting to go towards that end game as long as they have pawns on the board they can try to promote to knights. But again, jcarmody doesn't know what this handicap is, so they have no idea that Warvold cannot deliver a checkmate unless they have 3 knights on the board. That's what's so cool about this handicap thing is jcarmody doesn't know what they are. So the players are having to play with the handicap. jcarmody doesn't know what that handicap is, and you can get some wild positions as a result of that. So Yizwid's one is sack your rook for a bishop, knight, or a pawn before move 20. So let's see if they have that, if they have done any of that. It doesn't look like they have gotten as many of the opening moves out, so we don't see the rook sacrificing anything yet, but we do see an early H pawn move, so it looks like he's trying to push this idea so that when you can capture, he's going to sack that rook earlier on in the game, but maybe try to wait until he has to sack it for the best possible moment to do so. But he's setting it up, it looks like, or trying to. So that's going to be a good one as well. And Jonoff is game. Let's see how Jonoff is doing. And I do not remember what Jonoff's handicap was. Let's see. Oh, Jonoff's handicap is the first 3 pawn moves must spell fab. But they can move other pieces between those pawn moves. But they have to spell fab with their first 3 pawn moves in the game. So how does he approach this? Well, he gets off the first one with the f5 Dutch-ish type looking position. And then after g3, he gets knight c3. And then after bishop d2, he gets his other knight in the game. And then he castles. And now he gets his a pawn move in, a6, which looks a little weird in this position. But he gets it in for his next pawn move. And then he quickly gets in b5. And Jonoff has already completed his handicap of spelling fab with his first 3 pawn moves. So congratulations to Jonoff. Now you just must proceed and try to win the game. Good deal there. I love that. Yeah, Wervold is hilarious. It's going to be a fun. I think a lot of these games, and we're not probably going to see a whole lot of them because there's so many, but there's going to be some really fun games with these handicaps, especially since so many players took handicaps and even stronger hander or harder handicaps as well. So pineapple chiffon cake, I don't believe has a handicap that I recall. So this is just going to be a normal chess game, one of the rare ones for this simul, and I'm going to have to remember that as well. Uh, but we get a nice move in here. We got the C5 structure here. So far, Pineapple Chiffon Cake is just doing fine, getting development, putting some pressure here. I like this. This is actually going to be a more evenly matched game for the Simul host too, because jcarmody, I believe, is around 1600, just like Pineapple is. But Pineapple is not playing 20-some boards like jcarmody is. So even though they have a time disadvantage to some extent, I believe Pineapple is going to have an advantage with that and see if they can get a win against jcarmody with that. Narwolf now did take a handicap. So if we go, let's see, Narwolf's handicap was, oh, your A and your E pawns cannot go past the 5th rank or the 4th rank as white. Okay, so the A and the E pawns are not able to go past the 4th rank in the game. So again, it may not matter in the opening, probably won't matter much in the middle game. You get to an end game, however, you're going to want to probably trade these pawns off because they're never going to be able to threaten promotion or anything. They cannot go past the 4th rank. So how did Narwhal get the opening out? Well, they played e4. And then they played a normal taking the center moment here, right? Just piling in on the center. I think they're definitely interested in trading the e-pawn at some point. So we might see an earlier pawn push with the e-pawn. It looks like we are building up for a possible push here. And you got the knight coming in, castle, bishop e3. So he, though not all haven't pushed the pawn yet. I'm kind of surprised. I thought they would push the pawn and get it out of the way so that they can then advance it a little bit. But maybe they're thinking they can't move an e pawn past the fifth rank because it's only the fourth, so they can't advance it. That's right. So this pawn is stuck. So that's going to be an interesting one. They really need one of these pawn moves to move here and capture this guy, right? They want to get rid of this. So this pawn is kind of sitting here, but it can never actually advance. And that's going to change the position a little bit for Narwhal. Of course, jcarmody doesn't know that. So we'll see how that plays into the game. JC with 2 wins already. Wow. All right. Yeah, let's jump in. I think I can see the score page here. We do see that 2 wins are in play. There's 26 games still playing though. So tons of chess left to play. Yeah, but interesting in there. Let's get back in then to the games because we got a lot more to start covering initially here. Let's go to our Echo game. Echo's handicap was, let's see, was the bishops can't capture. So this is going to be a tough one with the bishops not able to capture. They're just kind of decoration. So this is going to be an interesting one to see get played out. And wow, wild moves from Echo here. Very just throwing pawns down the board. It looks like they're going to try to get their bishop captured. Very smart play here, saying, please capture this bishop. I can't take anything with it, so I want to get rid of it and recapture. That's a brilliant way to start dealing with that handicap and saying, please take my bishop, please take my bishop. But so far, jcarmody hasn't obliged, and because they don't know what the handicap is, but they're just like, no, I don't need to take the bishop. I'm going to leave it there. And they haven't helped Echo at this moment yet. Echo still has both bishops. And again, putting a bishop on aggressive square, but not able to capture anything. But jcarmody doesn't know that, so that's going to be another interesting one. I'm excited to see how this one plays out. Love the opening choice, though, by bringing the bishop here and trying to get jcarmody to capture on h6. I like that style here. Okay, so if I remember, Montegral did not take a handicap or anything. This is a normal chess game on this one. So let's see how Montegral is going to take an advantage of the 28 boards that jcarmody has to play simultaneously, and they try to get an advantage with their game. Looks like they're doing a very good job getting everything opened up. Yep, just kicking that away. An early e5 push, taking advantage of the bishop here and saying, well, you're not really necessarily going to be able to trade queens if you capture here, but I kind of want to capture here and maybe hit this knight and force it away from the center and gain some more space. And maybe the bishop comes in to support it later on this point here. We'll see how that kind of develops. We also have the idea of going after this, but with jcarmody being able to castle, that's not too much of a threat. Probably not worth the wasted move of putting the knight on g4 unless they plan to capture the pawn and the rook in exchange for the 2 minor pieces, which is an equal trade in material, but most players believe that 2 minor pieces are better in the middle game than in there, so they would rather keep the minor pieces in the middle game here and not trade them off too early. And Rob W, I don't think has a handicap, so I think this is going to be another game where it's just a regular game of chess, and Rob got a win earlier today in his team league, I know, for my team. So yay for Rob there. So let's see if he can score a win against jcarmody. And by the way, for those who didn't know, jcarmody was one of the players that won the Aces Award for having 6.5+ points last season. So they had a fantastic season. I think they had 7 points out of 8 last season on board 7, if I recall. So jcarmody, excellent season in Team League last season, coming off from that real high. I didn't see how he was doing this season so far, but now I get to play a simul against a bunch of players, a lot of high rated players with various handicaps that he doesn't know what they are. So be a lot of fun. Ooh, ouch, getting a pin right here. So A6 needs to get played to keep the balance going somewhat. And he does play A6, gets the bishop here. And of course, we're going to attack, break the pin. Whoo, and then the knight gets out. And we don't have to worry about that anymore. And then, of course, we just get some castling. And the knight is going to recapture here. So a fairly level game here between these two players. Rob going to see maybe they can push f4 early on to challenge the pawn there again. We'll see how it develops. You could also maybe bring the bishop out here. There's also a4 if you want to start maybe going after this stuff. Is also a possibility later on. You got to be worried about this though, kicking this idea here. So we do have to be careful of that. So maybe this either needs a defense like rook or queen somewhere. You could also play a3 and just stop that pawn moving there as well. So that's also an option after presumably the pawn is going to take the knight. All right, let's get to see Astrakhan playing, and this is a non-handicap game if I remember. So let's see, we got a Trapowski, I think this is, right? Not sure. And we just get some pieces developing. Look, good development right now for both sides. This is a level game. Yeah, a lot of positions here. So got the center developed. Of course, jcarmody playing a very conservative approach here in a simul, not going for anything crazy, and they don't necessarily want complicated. So just kind of hanging back, making some moves, getting pieces developed, allowing Astrakhan time to develop in the center. Very nice develop here. Be interested to see if we get kingside or queenside castling. I kind of suspect Astrakhan's going to castle queenside and start going after the king from jcarmody. At least that's how I would approach the position here. And let's see how we get going out here. Give you a chance to jump in for talk about game. I will try to remember that, Tommy. I will try to remember that. There's a lot of games to follow, so it's gonna be a crazy one. Trying to keep up and get some games on the board. We have David uh, Seafire. Yeah, David Seafire is joined. That's awesome. He is getting. I think he had COVID. He said he's getting over, so hope he recovers soon and has a fun way to pass the time playing some chess. So let's see how he opens up at e4. Okay, so we take the center again. We got a similar position earlier that we saw in the simul with this type of structure. So again, just taking the center because why not? Pushing the knight, doing the same structure with that double pawn here, but we have the bishop protecting here as well. So again, everything kind of defended safe. We got f4 maybe later on to start pushing forward. And after castles, we get f3. So going for the big long pawn chain here, cutting off this square for both the bishop and the knight. Maybe the bishop will go here, possibly here, and then we'll see where play takes us. The pawn pointing suggests maybe we're gonna see David playing on the queen side, but maybe he's using this pawn as leverage to play crazy chess with g4, h4. But I would suspect he's going to play a more conservative approach and just go get the play on the queen side here. All this stuff with the pawns pointing over there. We'll get bishop b3. The knight's going to go somewhere. I'm not sure where yet, but then maybe f4, f5. Maybe the a pawn will go down too. Who knows? Okay, RPCX. And RPCX handicap is their first three moves have to be knight moves, no exceptions. Okay, so I'm going to assume we're going to see RPCX playing some quick knight moves. We got one knight move, we got two knight move, and we got three knight moves. So handicap achieved by RPCX and got the three knight moves in. And now it's just going to be a chess game, but the knight's early on moving, and he's playing a hyper opening now to recover from those early knight moves here. Moving the knight back, gonna fianchetto, and jcarmody taking the center, saying thank you very much. Of course, doesn't know why the knights were moving so early like that, but now our RPCX has to recover from moving those knights like that by moving some pawns, having a smaller center, kind of taking the black side of the pieces perhaps in this position with that extra move to help compensate a bit. And yeah, very good move here. Ooh, strikes first blood with the pawn, taking on e5 and winning that pawn. Okay, so there's those games. Now let's see. I got 1, 2, 3. I have 20 games in here. That means there's some other games that I either haven't even entered in or seen yet. Okay, let's see if I can pull those up and figure out which ones those are. Um, any ones that don't look familiar? Actually, I don't know. I don't think we have fork in. I don't recall seeing that one. So let's go ahead and put that one in. It's one of the ones that I'm missing. What other one do we have? Narwolf. Don't recall this one, so let's do this one as well. Yeah. Okay. So that's two other additional ones. Let's see. Other ones that I may got those, recognize that. I don't know if I even have Pawn Eater in. I don't recall seeing that game, so let's put that one in just in case. All right. That's three additional ones, and two have ended, so we may not get those in. King Life. Recall that one. That one, Tommy Silk. I think I did Checkmate Insurance. My Son Warbold, AACT. Let's do Intertemporal. I believe we didn't do that one. That's another one that I think is missing. All right, and did we do Mr. Scribbles? Maybe we missed Mr. Scribbles. I don't recall Mr. Scribbles. Maybe I did and it was earlier on and I have since forgotten. But let's put that one in. And I'll be able to see if I have added games, so then I'll know if I double did it or not. 24, I have 25. Oh, the game had already ended for Mr. Scribbles. Okay. Well, let's go to some of the ones we maybe haven't seen yet here. Uh, Fork 2020. So Fork's handicap is they always have to have less time at the end of their turn than jcarmody. And so for those of you who know, Fork likes to play fast or think long and hard, but they always have to have less time than jcarmody, which shouldn't be a problem for most of this game until maybe times get down a little lower. So if jcarmody gets into time trouble, that means Fork is going to have to force themselves into time trouble. So one of those where it's probably going to play a bit longer. The longer the game goes, that handicap will become more into effect. Otherwise, it may not matter as much. So we'll see if it plays a difference or not in this one. And of course, jcarmody doesn't know what the handicap is, so has no idea with that. So it looks like a different game. So this will be a fun one. Okay, Psychmar 2. Let's see what happens with that one. Uh, what was their handicap? They asked for a handicap. So let's see what their handicap was. Psychmar 2. And I don't think it went on my other page, so I gotta look at the other one to see if it shows up. Oh, Psychmar 2. Their first three pawn moves must spell egg. Okay, so first three pawn moves, they can move pieces in between those pawn moves, but their first three pawn moves have to spell egg. So let's see how they decided to do that. They have the black pieces. So their first move is e6, so they got the e in, and then they played g5, getting the g in, and a quick g4. There you go. That's one way to get the egg in very early on with an aggressive pawn push. Very Mr. Scribbles like to get the pawn push like that. Okay, and so they bring the knight back. And yeah, Saimar going for it on the king side early on, using that g-pawn push to get the handicap, to meet the handicap roll, and then going for it to say, okay, so the g-pawn's down the board. Let's get the h-pawn down the board. Let's get the knight down the board. All right, and then Pawn Eater, I don't think has a handicap. I think this is just a normal game. So let's see how this opens up. We get, wow, a lot, same kind of hyper modern defense by jcarmody, allowing Pawn Eater to get the center temporarily at least, and just bringing e5 in and starting to challenge. Okay, and then c5 saying, yeah, no, I really want to go with this. Now, my only thing is, couldn't we just en passant here and win a pawn, maybe? It seems like there was a chance to win a pawn there for Pawn Eater by en passanting. But they did not play that. They moved their bishop back. Okay, we get kicking the pieces back. And look at this pawn structure by jcarmody. Like just pawns, pawns, pawns all over it. You would almost think that they had a handicap challenge of moving so many pawns and so many moves or something. So that is also interesting. Yes, exactly, Tommy. It could get tricky if they move the pawn, if they get down to time trouble, and Fork always has to have less time, right? Jake Harmony having 1 second. But you know, they get the increment 30 seconds, so he should always be able to have 30 seconds left before making his move, right? So we could do it that way. So yeah, we get there, and then let's go to intertemporal and see how they do. Now, intertemporal's handicap, let me pull it up, I think was, okay, you can't move any pieces on your opponent's side until you've been checked. So they need Jay Carmi to check them. All right. So they need to have Jay Carmody check them so that they can move pieces on Jay Carmody's side of the board. So let's see how he tries to get Jay Carmody to give a check. I would think he would try to do it earlier in the opening, but it doesn't look like it. And it looks like he's just going to play very defensively for a while here and saying, okay, no early checks are going to be given. So I'm just going to hang out on my side of the board for the foreseeable future until I get that check. That's going to be an interesting one because, again, your opponent has to give it to you, right? It's not something you can necessarily force easily. You have to try to bait your opponent to give you that check without hurting your position much. All right, I don't know. Let's see real quick where we stand pieces here. I'm going to go jump in because I know we're missing a couple games potentially because we have 26 in play and I only have 25 and I don't know which one I'm missing. Is it Alt Control perhaps? Let's see if I put Alt Control in the game history. Maybe that's the one that I'm missing. Let's see if that is the one I need. And I'll hit submit. Yeah, let's see how that one goes. Nope, already had Alt Control because I still have 24. Hmm. I don't know which one I'm missing, but let's go back up to the top and maybe I'll refresh our memory. We left Duty in this position here. Let's see the moves. They played quite a bit of moves afterwards. If we remember, Duty's uh, handicap for the game was your queen only moves like a rook. So Duty has the queen, but it's only like a rook. So it has to be careful where it is and isn't covering. It can't move diagonally. And so we get these moves here. So far, that queen hasn't come into play yet. And using this maybe to try to get a trade here, offering an exchange of a sacrifice there of the pawn, or exchange rather, and saying, yep, go ahead and change. Yay, I get my queen off the board. Now my handicap is no longer a factor. So good job for Duty getting rid of the handicap. And without the queens on the board, it's just a normal game of chess for them. Okay, let's see King Life where we ended here. Not as many moves playing for King Life. Now King Life, 12 King 12 Life, for those who've forgotten, his uh, handicap is the king can only move when it's capturing. So this could be very interesting when pieces start leaving the board, right? Because if you get a check, you have to block or you have to capture the piece checking you because you can't move the king away. It can only move when it's being captured. So it cannot castle, and it's stuck in the center here, and it needs to stay protected. And you can see how King Life in this position here. Notice how they're playing everything around their king. They want to make sure if they get checked that they can block or capture the checking piece, because otherwise their king won't be able to make a legal move in that position with the handicap, and he would have to resign the game. So to keep the game going, he's making sure his king is extra protected. And let's jump to Scrooge. Scrooge's game is very interesting to me because the knights can't move backwards. Oh, yay, you would sack the exchange to get rid of one of their rooks. Cool. So meeting that, very nice. Awesome. Okay, so in this position in the game, Scrooge cannot move the knight backwards ever. They can only go forward. So has to be very judicious of where the knights move because it can never go back, kind of like pawns. They can only go forward. So not moving the knights earlier in the game, but now made their first knight move. So this knight is never coming back to these ranks ever again. It's on the 6th rank. It can only go forward uh, down the board. So one knight can no longer go to the 7th and 8th ranks area. And we have a 6th challenging the knight back, forcing it, looks like, back to a3 here. So interesting for Scrooge, having to balance those knights. When you move it, you can never make it go backwards, so you got to be careful. For example, do you really want to put the knight here? Because the knight can never go backwards, so maybe this square becomes almost doing nothing in the position, and later on you wish you could move it elsewhere, but there's nowhere forward for it to really go unless, say, you sacked it on this pawn here or something. So got to be very careful how you move the knights. Now, Sakal's uh, handicap was a big one, if I recall. And what was it? It was you can only capture your opponent's pawns with your pawns. So never capturing pawns with anything but your pawns. So you got to be very careful how that goes too. And playing with pieces as of now, looking to exchange the dark squared bishop makes sense, weakening that side, and then probably pushing the pawns a little bit. But again, you got to be careful, right? Because if the pawn retakes, you can't recapture with the piece. You can only take his pawns with your pawns. So you got to be very careful how pawns are exchanged in those type of lines where you otherwise could just capture it with your piece after moving a pawn. You now have to be careful how that plays out. Only 8 moves played, so both sides taking more time, specifically Sakal with 20 minutes now, and building this structure, very solid. Has then some knights out, going to get the bishop out. I will see if the H pawn goes down the board or not. Okay, checkmate insurance, playing very fast, actually gained some time on their clock, 31 minutes and 42 seconds, so blitzing out their moves. Checkmate insurance is the pawns always capture pawns when they can, even if it's en passant. So no matter what, when a pawn can capture, see, pawns always capture pawns. Yeah, so a pawn can capture a pawn, they have to capture that pawn. Oops, I didn't want to get rid of my board. There we go. Okay, so let's see. We left him off of here. They are obligated to take that e pawn. Let's see if they are obligated for any other pawns taking so far. Nope. Oh, they have here. All right. No pawns attacking a pawn yet, so we don't have that. Ooh, they did capture and win their first pawn here. So they're up a pawn now. The queens get off the board. And after the knight attacking here, we're probably going to see the bishop grab another pawn. Oh, the bishop just took the knight and says, yeah, no, it's okay. So that's a good way to grab that. So up material here, so well on their way. Checkmate Insurance doing a great job. The pawn handicap hasn't hurt them yet. No effect, it seems like, yet in there. Okay, Silk Wander has some moves on the board. Now, Silk Wander's handicap was that it's had to do with the rooks. The rooks can't move when they're threatened. Okay, so rooks cannot move when they're threatened here. So we have to be very careful of our rooks not getting under threat at the wrong time. And it looks like they're just building up an attack on this pawn here potentially. Yeah, moving the pieces in, getting ready for some action. I expect we're going to see a sacrifice potentially in the future over here. This queen's going to kind of guard this a little bit here. This knight can jump in at some point maybe to sacrifice for a pawn if they have to disrupt things. We'll see. Be interested to see how this gets played out here. I like this kind of move here. And then, okay, Tommy, I'm going to go look at your game just so you know. So heads up, looks like we have a few moves. Tommy's handicap. Let's see, Tommy's handicap is if you can take a piece or a pawn, you have to take the piece. So you don't have the option of taking the pawn in that particular situation. So knight bd7, we got 3. No handicap issues yet. And it looks like bishop d3. So far, just both sides getting their pieces out into the position. Tommy just kind of controlling stuff in the center here. They push their pawn, trying to invite some weaknesses around jcarmody's position on the king side. And remember, if their handicap is if they can take a piece or a pawn, they have to take the piece. So when he is calculating, Tommy's going to have to keep that in mind, that you can't reverse orders at some times where you would want to. You might want to take a pawn rather than take a piece in a certain position, but if you have the option between the two, he's going to have to take that piece. So got to keep that in mind. So let's look at Mennonite's position and see how Mennonite is doing. Let's see, there we go. All right, Mennonite, a lot of moves have been played in Mennonite's game. So let's check what Mennonite's handicap was again. Your pawns must move 2 squares on their first move. So no matter what, if you're moving the pawn the first time, that pawn has to move 2 squares. So that will change how Mennonite develops their pawn structure for sure. And they get to move their e pawn 2 squares and attack the knight. That is good. And now they get to move their pawn normally the 1 square, attacking the knight again, gaining that space and bringing their bishop out. Good space acquired here. And now the bishop comes out and they're threatening to push further into the white position, just gaining a lot of space. Don't need to move these pieces, these pawns anytime soon, because they can get all of their pieces developed in the game without moving those pawns. So we may not see much pawn moves for the next set of moves for Mennonite because with having to move pawns 2 squares, maybe h5 could be a thing, but do you really want to be pushing these pawns 2 squares? Probably not. Obviously, we can't move here, and not sure we want to push the pawn 2 squares over here yet either. So we got e3, buffering against this pawn advance, and then the last move is castle. So Mennonite got a bit of a space advantage, but jcarmody still more than in it. Maybe need to figure out how to get their pieces rerouted into a bit of a better position. I would like maybe somehow this pawn to get to either c3. Later on, maybe a pawn sack could be offered in certain positions, but c3 just to buffer this Very hard to see how jcarmody is going to get some of these pieces active, though. This bishop is decent right now. This one, of course, is just hitting on this pawn structure, not doing as much here, but is guarding this pawn as well. Although this could become a target, and then they would have to, jcarmody would have to decide whether they play g4, h4, or sack the pawn and give it up. So that'll be an interesting one as well, seeing how that goes. Okay, that makes sense, Tommy. Yep. Try to avoid any tension on the pieces. Yeah, the handicaps really provide a very unique flavor to the game. jcarmody doesn't know it, but you know it, so you have to play certain ways to adapt to that. And that makes the games a little interesting, and some of them even very difficult. Uh, so we got My Son Never Call Me. And the handicap for My Son Never Called Me was two of them. They accomplished one already. But My Son Never Called Me was the queen can only move like a bishop. And they already, in the opening, played 5 moves in the game without a capture. So moves in a series without a capture. So they completed that handicap. They asked for two of them. But now their queen can only move like a bishop, and that is going to impact their play here because they have basically two light squared bishop, but jcarmody doesn't realize that yet anyway. And so we get the pawn checks here. The knights are coming over here. Wow, here's some moves. The bishop comes in with a nice pin. That's going to be a little annoying for jcarmody to deal with. Rook e8 probably sooner rather than later will have to get played, but you kind of want the rook on the f file here because you're also looking to play f5 potentially. jcarmody plays c5, closing that diagonal here, but also saying, hey, if you want to en passant in this position, I'm also okay doing that and getting the position a little relief here, and then maybe bringing the queen into the game somehow. The rooks maybe could play over here, and we could just say, I have a passed pawn later in the game. I could try to do something with that. Could be their play later on. So knight d6. Ooh, yes, they got this square in here. So this is going to be targeting that light squared bishop here in the position. We'll see if jcarmody wants to give up that light square. It looks like they have to give up by force if they want. So depending on how badly this knight wants to go capturing this bishop, they're looking to target that and acquire the bishop pair. Interesting. All right. How is Warvold doing? Warvold, I believe, if let's check out. I forget what Warvold is. What was Warvold's handicap? Yes, you cannot checkmate unless there's 3 knights on the board. So this is one that is probably not going to come up until much, much later in the game, like in an end game situation. So we'll see if the game progresses that far, and then all of a sudden they're going to keep. But I suspect Warvold will try to keep their knights on the board if at all possible, just so they don't have to promote a bunch of pawns to knights later on. That would be difficult keeping enough pawns on the board to promote for checkmate later on. So we'll see what they do there. And a5, a4. Okay, very holding everything back for Warvold, right? Develop, put pieces out, sit and wait. Love the bishops here. Of course, the knights are also in there. This bishop needs to get a little freed, so we need like f5 or something so it can breathe again perhaps. It would like to play maybe the B pawn here, but can't at the moment. So we'll see how jcarmody takes this position over here. I'm interested to see if we're going to get an exchange and go for the bishop pair in this position or not. Because again, Warvold probably going to try to hang on to their knights whenever possible and probably would welcome an exchange of bishop, not necessarily exchanging of the knights. Yeah, my queen can only be on light square, so I want that light square bishop. Yeah, okay. Okay, we'll see how that turns out a little bit. Let's look at the next one really with Yizgwid. Some moves got played. Yizgwid's, what was their handicap? I can't remember. It's sack your rook for a bishop, knight or pawn for move 20. And I believe Golden Retriever Chess said they did accomplish that. So let's see that happen. And they did. They pushed the pawn, and they're baiting the knight to come so that they can capture this and say, okay, I weaken your king structure for the sacrifice. And that is what happened. And now, after knight here, we're targeting this pawn, and we're bringing some attackers to the party and saying, hey, maybe I can go after your king. I'll bring my bishop here. I can start targeting this pawn here. I could even start trading off your light squared bishop here to weaken the king further. But going for the aggressive attack early on, we'll see if this bishop gets played, because it would hold on to this pawn and attack the queen a little bit. So that could be an option maybe, offering to maybe even exchange dark squared um, bishops in that line as well. So that could be an option in this position here. I don't know. I don't really want to play. Maybe I can play this move though. I'm going to hit here and I'm also targeting the knight. So why couldn't I play that move? Maybe I can play that move. That looks like a good move. And it's jcarmody's a move. So if we play e4, we're going to hit the bishop. And if you capture, that's okay because I'm going to take the knight. So maybe there's a good chance for jcarmody to go up some material through tactics. All right. Jonoff, I hope Jonoff has a good, fun game. Okay, let's see. What was Jonoff's um, handicap? Jonoff's handicap was your first three pawn moves must spell fab, and they did that. I remember they did that. So it's just a normal chess game at the moment now after that. They got knight to b d2, bishop b7. Yep, like just keeping that structure. Okay, Jonoff, look at that structure. I like that. That's a good, fun structure. And we're going to see a fianchetto here, it looks like. So that'll be interesting. Bishop here going after a nice pin, saying now that you played b3, c3 is not easy for you to play in this position to block it, you're going to at least need to do something like that first. So that's exactly what jcarmody does and say yes, and I will play most likely c3, buffering this pawn here, kicking away this bishop potentially in there, or I could even just ignore it and say, okay, I'm going to play something like c4. You have a pin on my knight. I'm not worried right now. Not going to play a move like e4 at the moment, so we can just hold this pin as well. So we'll see if that gets played. They go for it. They say, okay, I'm going to bring the knight and bring another piece into the party. So now the knight is securely defending it, but two aggressive pieces here. We'll see how they respond. I suspect we're going to see something like maybe a 3, and then we have an interesting move of the knight coming here and attacking the queen potentially, but you got to be careful because I'm not obligated to take, am I? I can play my queen to c1, and then now your knight is under attack by my bishop. Your bishop is under attack by my pawn, and if it moves away, I can play b4, and now your knight has no defender. So again, that might be tactically not okay for Jonoff. So we may not see knight c3 in this position next move. My guess is this is just going to hang tight, and we're going to see a move like a3 and put a question to that bishop and this pressure on d2. Very good. Yeah, exactly. And it does make it harder. Some of these handicaps are not a big deal early on, but as the game goes on, they're going to get a lot more difficult, right? Like if we have King 12 life, where his king can only move if he's capturing, the pieces start coming off the board. That comes into play. You can't move your king anywhere easily, right? So you're kind of stuck defending your king around those squares, looking to try to win material through tactics in a defensive type of setup, perhaps. So, going to be interesting to see how those type of games, will progress. Pineapple Chiffon, let's see how we're doing here. This is just a no handicap game, so it's just a straight chess game. We got c4 offering up a pawn early on to break up some structure here, looks like. And they capture on the d1 and say, no thanks. I don't want that free pawn. Mm-mm. And then we have a recapture and then a castle kingside. So again, not accepting this and saying, I don't know if I want this bishop opened and things like that. I'm going to just leave the pawn here. If you want to capture, you can, but I will just get my king castled. Knight c3 gets played, and then we get the move a6, covering this square, not wanting knights to, say, jump around over here perhaps. Very interesting position here. It looks like a level game. Pineapple Chiffon Cake also has 18 minutes, and we can see our host time ticking down very rapidly, and now almost under, getting close to an hour left on the game, with many, many, many games to play. So we'll see here. In fact, while we do that, we should probably take a quick break and look at the score page and see if we have any developments. Nope, 26 playing, just 2 wins. Okay, so nothing changed yet with that. It's still 26 games, and the clock is ticking more and more for all boards. With all those games in play, there's a lot of clocks ticking that jcarmody has it even isn't even looking at the board while their clocks are ticking. So all those clocks are going to go rapidly tick down the board, and that is going to play a huge factor later on if time trouble becomes an issue with a lot of games still in play. So jcarmody is going to need to try to force a lot of faster moving games, but also try to force some games to end more quickly, especially with so many boards in play. Bishop g4 gets played, h6, and this was the one with Narwolf. They took a handicap, and I forget what the handicap was. It was the A and the E pawns can't go past the fourth rank. That's what it was. Okay, so they can't go past the fourth rank. So this E pawn just hanging out here can never capture, can never push forward. It's just a pretty pawn, but jcarmody doesn't know that. And now we got g4, b5, thank you for the pawn. It went and grabbed that, c6, and brings it back. Very good. I suspect that jcarmody afterwards is going to be very, very tired. I don't think they realized they were going to have so many people show up to play him. 28 boards is amazing. A lot of games to play with not a lot of time really, with 30 plus 30 and 3 minutes per opponent. Those clocks will tick so fast that just that time evaporates so fast. Okay, so Echo is handicap is the bishops cannot actually capture, right? So he has to bait, he's trying to bait jcarmody to capture his bishops because he can't make any captures with them. So he's trying to put them into positions where they will be captured here. So far, jcarmody just ignoring that bishop and saying, I don't need to take that. And Echo would love for them to. So let's see if we do get a bishop trade yet. We have knight to e5. Good. See, he would love to exchange this bishop. So he's probably excited for that. He brings his knight in. And look at this. jcarmody helping Echo out. Gobbles up not one, but both bishops. So Echo neutralized their handicap here early on by move 10 and got rid of their bishops. And they don't have to worry about the handicap anymore. So it goes to show you when your opponent doesn't know what your handicap is, sometimes it works out in your favor. So Echo just plays a normal game of chess right now. Open, semi-open H file to maybe get some play with that pawn on g4. I know Echo likes to attack and is a very aggressive player, so I'm thinking we're going to see something like queen c7, castle queenside, the other rook coming over here and putting some big pressure down on the H file. So we'll see if that ends up happening or not. But I think Echo is going to be thrilled to have gotten rid of those bishops off so early, and also gets a promising attacking position against the white king potentially here on the semi-open H file. All right, queen d2, rook h8 going backwards, e4, pawn takes, bishop's taking, queen c7 is on the board here. Okay, so definitely going to be castling queenside. I'm a little interested that the rook went all the way back to h8. I thought the rook might go to h7 because preparing to bring the other rook over to h8, but maybe they saw some things they were a little worried about here and decided, no, we're not going to do that. Also have to be careful of this, right? With the bishop moving. So some tactical things to look at. Okay, Montague Tiger is a normal chess game here. We have a couple moves that got played. It looks like Montague Tiger got their pieces developed. They're going to get a little bit of space. We do get a pawn trade like we thought, but Montague Tiger didn't decide to push recapturing with the e-pawn and kicking the knight, instead going for the knight outpost in the center and saying, thank you much, I will have a beautiful knight here, and maybe I'll even follow up with something like f4 later on to help secure that knight position even further. E6 gets played, and then a quick castle. And again, maybe we'll see f4 later in the game. Potentially the bishop comes out first. The queen could even come and try to trade this bishop off as well. There's no rush to add another defender to this knight. It's not currently under a threat at the moment. So f4 or something doesn't need to get played just right away. Has some time. And how is Rob W doing? Rob W, no handicap here either. Just the game of chess. Fantastic. So we do get a3, like we talked about, not wanting this knight kick because it's serving the role of a defense on e4, and then queen d7. Interesting. Why queen d7? Where's the queen looking to go? Are we looking to try to just trade off the queens? Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. And then h3, blocking maybe that attempt. And then we get the move a5. Okay, so that's the real move they were wanting. Protecting the b5 pawn, playing a 5, maybe even a later a4. Also, the bishop is going to come out to a better diagonal than on b7 and saying, hey, I'd like this diagonal perhaps instead of the other diagonal, which is hitting these pawns that are probably not going to be moved anytime soon. So that's a possibility as well. And we have rook e1, just adding another defender because we also have to be careful of moves like this, kicking the knight, right? Because the pawn can capture. Pawn captures back. Of course, the rook is hanging, so the bishop has to come somewhere first in that line. But developing the rook a little bit, hitting over here. We're not probably going to see f4 at least right away in this position, most likely. But who knows? Anything can happen. So good luck to Rob in the game against jcarmody. Using that clock, look at that, under an hour already. And c5. Oh my goodness, look at that. Offering a en passant move, gaining that space. Look at the pawn wall. Looking to shut that bishop out of the game potentially. All right, Astrakhan, see where we got with them here. You fear we're gonna see what's that? Yeah, it's busy, Sakal, to commentate. A lot of games. I'm trying to get as many highlights as possible of different games, but it's kind of hard because there's so many games, so many moves going on. I think I'm still missing one of the games even. I can't figure out which one I'm missing. There's just so many games. I'll have to work on that next time. Fork. Oh, we have a result. Fork has won. Okay, so let's go look at that. Looks like Fork has won. Does any other of the other games ended, I wonder? Do we have a result on that one? Let's go to the scoreboard real quick. Uh, 2 wins, 2 losses now. So two more games ended in favor of jcarmody's opponent. So the score is even at 2-2. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes now. But 24 games still left in play. A lot of chess left to play. And jcarmody's probably going to say, I did not expect to have 20 plus players playing in my simul, and I'm going to need more time the next time. So we'll see how it gets played. We got d5, getting some space over here. We don't necessarily want to go this way, right? Because we will lose a pawn potentially, but maybe I have something. Oh, I don't because of the pin here. So I thought maybe I had some sort of tactic thing that I could do with the knight hitting the queen, but yeah, it doesn't work. So let's go with knight e7 castles. Okay. And then the pawn. Oh, losing a pawn here though, maybe. And getting rid of that dark squared bishop. And oh, gee, look at that. Here we go. We're going to go for another kingside attack. Probably pushing maybe here, trying to get this knight pushed away and then maybe follow up here. Though the knight can go to here, and I don't know how you make progress after that. So not sure we can play that right away. We're going to need to work on this position a little bit and prep it a little more, I think. And so we got the rook going to h8. We do see g5, knight f, h5, very good, has a great home also on this square potentially too. So very good prospects for that knight in the moment. h4, just protecting the pawn up a little bit here, okay. And knight f4, good, nice little home there. And again, opening up some pressure down the line. I probably want to see this pin looks very annoying as well. If jcarmody sees this idea, that could also be an issue. If we want to get very aggressive, we could also look at even perhaps playing f5 in this position and try to open up more lines over on this here, pressuring this potential here. So there's a lot of directions this game could go. Also, we could play a6 and b5 ideas as well if we want to go after some space and also the white king potentially. All right, David Sirfree, where are we at here? We left it at f3, not f4. We left it at f3, and we got e6, and then we get the bishop to pin the knight here, saying you can go ahead and take this pawn. I'm okay, because the knight's not going to be able to do any recapturing, and you can't do it with the queen because of how the pawn and the knight are interacting with that square. So we get h6. We back up the bishop, b6. Another move in there, interesting. I thought maybe c3 or c6 could be a possibility at some point, but maybe not yet. Queen to d2, just kind of eyeing things over here, saying, hey, if I capture and you capture, you lose a pawn, right? Something like that. Also connecting the rooks, which is always very important. So rooks can maybe get into play. Well, the rook doesn't want to necessarily go here, but rooks get into play. Probably rook d1 in this position. Queen to d7, and then bishop takes here. And we're going to see that pawn loss with the recapture and then capturing back. RPCX. RPCX was the one that had to move. Their first three moves had to be knight moves, and they did accomplish that. So now it is a normal game of chess with them kind of playing like the black pieces, a little slower opening because they had to move their knights initially. So they have a small center, and they kind of played it more conservatively. We see some moves in here, and that's fine. We got another wing pawn, so jcarmody going for it, swinging the pawns around. And then again, more of a defensive maneuvering game coming in here. That's very nice. I love this play. jcarmody looking for a trade, offering to say, "Oh, I got a fork here. You gotta capture the bishop, right?" And they do, and then recapturing with the knight, not the queen. Don't necessarily want to get it in the line of fire, so just hanging the queen back, keeping defending these pawns, keeping options open, bringing the knight to maybe a more active square. And now we have to figure out what we're doing with this knight. Where's the knight gonna go? And the knight says, I'm going to munch on a pawn, and I'm gonna open up this diagonal because I had two pieces attacking that pawn. So good find there for the pawn. And after the knight moves, tactics, tactics, we're going to possibly win some more material with another recapture, opening that discovered attack on the rook, which we do. Nummy nummy. And bringing the queen to put some pressure on the knight, but also checking the rook and saying, hey, do you realize your rook is undefended? And that's where the position is left off at the moment. Also having ideas of pushing this g-pawn, and if the knight moves, the bishop is also under attack. So this could be very dangerous and potentially more loss of material coming up. There is an in-between move after this, though, that can save the position potentially with this check. So we might end up seeing a move like this instead, covering this, not allowing the check, and then saying your knight needs to move, and then, I get your bishop. So we'll see what happens in over there. How did the game end with fork? What happened in this game? Let's look at this real quick. So we had some position. Okay, so pieces got exchanged. Both players playing very fast. Fork gaining time on the clock. Looks like we get some exchange pawn in here. Oh, there we go. And a queen goes up attack. F5. Queen comes back. Ooh, and we see a classical sacrifice. We remove the defended king, drawing the king out, and then bringing the rook over with another check. The king has to come back, or you can give up the queen for one move. Doesn't change the position, and then we get checkmate on h1. And so instead, the king came backwards, in the position, giving up that rook, and said, okay, I'm going to bring my queen to try to defend the checkmate here, but oop, can't defend the checkmate on h1 as well. So good job by Fork 2020. Very quickly game played. They gained 4 minutes and 25 seconds on their clock in that game. Wow, they really were blitzing it all out. And Sekmar 2, what is happening with Sekmar 2? Now they took a handicap as well, and uh, they had to spell egg. So they did that in the opening. They were able to spell egg with e6, g5, g4 very early on in the opening and kicked the knight away. Got this space advantage on the king side, maybe looking even to press an attack on the king side because they put their pawn on g4 so early on to follow up. So let's see how they continue the game. We got bishop to f4, then we got a knight taking that pawn saying, well, you left that hanging, so I will take that pawn, thank you. And then we got the move knight to e5, removing a defender on that pawn, but guess what? I still have a knight that's defending that pawn as or knight as well. So the knight decides it simply didn't need to, but decided to just retreat, offering to put some pressure on this piece with two pieces, saying let's exchange the knights. And we see jcarmody saying, yes, I will. So a pawn down for jcarmody in this position here. Still an attack for Simar 2. Simar 2, this h4, possibly even coming down here and putting the bishop, excuse me, entombing the bishop a little bit could be an interesting idea as well. Okay, we have some moves here for the Pawn Eater game. Pawn Eater, this is not a handicapped game. And so what we have in here, we got knight to b6, the bishop comes back, knight bd7. We got the h pawn moving, Pawn Eater opening it, trying to open up the king side a little bit on jcarmody and saying, well, I think my pieces are a little better positioned for a king side action here. And jcarmody says, we're going g4, we're going to close that down. And after knight to h2, putting all that pressure on this pawn, basically forcing a move here. We missed, ooh, so instead of h5, I think h5 was necessary here, but we get knight to b6, missing that. And so winning a pawn here, right? Because we have three attackers on this and only two defenders. And so we got bishop takes g4, and my guess, we get the knight. We'll see if the knight captures back, and the queen comes into the action, and another pawn lost. This is what makes it so difficult playing a simul when you get so many different positions, and you have to make so many quick moves for jcarmody. Very tough indeed. Okay, now this was an interesting one because if I remember correctly, intertemporal cannot move any of their pieces on their opponent's side of the board until jcarmody gives his king a check. So the king has to get checked before any of black's pieces can come anywhere over here. Otherwise, they have to hang out on their side of the board. So let's see if we get a check at all yet. I don't think we will. Little closed up here. Oh, we captured. Look, we're baiting. We're like, please take this pawn and give my king a check. And we do. Look at that. All right. So intertemporal now meets the handicap, and their king is in check. So they can now move their pieces into their opponent's territory in the rest of the game. So we'll see a more normal looking game here as well. All right. And then Mr. Scribble's game ended. I want to see what happened in this game that ended so quickly. We had G5. Wow. Baiting for the pawn sack. And then E5 attacking the knight. It comes here. Pawn hits. Brings the knight back. All right. Here we go. And then we had the bishop to g2 and a quick resign. So I'm not sure what happened. Maybe had to go. Yeah, I wonder if that was the case. Maybe he had to go um, because I don't know why they would resign here. Yeah, what was their handicap? Was there a reason because of their handicap? You must make 4 pawn moves. Okay. Let's see. All right, 1 second. I have someone on Slack messaging me about their handicap. They have a question there, so let me try to respond real quick. Uh, let's see. No. Okay. Yeah. Some of the handicaps have interesting things, so it's a little harder to do. But yeah, someone had a question about their handicap. So, all right. So back to the games there. All right. So let's go to AA control. And I don't think we get through any of their game yet. So let's definitely hit that. Oh, he failed the handicap. Okay. So let's see real quick the fail handicap. I forgot what happened in there. Oh, that's why, because was supposed to make 4 of his 5 moves in the opening were supposed to be pawns, and he forgot. And he moved knight d7. That's what it was. Okay, I see. Oh well, it's hard to remember the handicaps sometimes. Okay, so for alt control, let's look at see what did their handicap was your bishops cannot move after move 20. Okay, so unlike the other one where the bishops uh, can it capture in the game, this one they play like normal, but then they're frozen after move 20 if they're still on the board. Okay, so we get knight f3, b6, and again, gonna probably play, yeah, Fian showing the bishops, they want to trade off those bishops very quickly, I think, is what we're gonna see. Yep, munch, 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 and that's how we get through the handicap. Our bishops are gone before move 20, so good job by alt control for taking care of their handicap that way. That's a nice strategy to do that. And now it's just a normal game of chess, right? With a little bit of odd pawn. Ooh, whoa, what is this? What is this? Bishop here. Oh, because they say you can't take the bishop, use your queen, but guess what? I can take the queen and then I can take your bishop. So that is what happens. Oops. Oops. Nice tactical idea, but it missed the idea that the queens could trade off first. Okay, so now jcarmody playing a pawn down or a piece down. Uh-oh. And the handicap, which jcarmody doesn't know, doesn't apply anymore because of alt control's very smart opening move choice to get his bishops developed and quickly trade them off. All right, let's go back to duty 5521 and see their handicap was that duty's queen is only moving like a rook. Okay, so duty's queen only moves like a rook. And only a few moves have gotten played here. We got knight to c3, bishop to e6, rook a c1, and a5, and smartly earlier in the position was able to trade off the queen, so the handicap doesn't apply, and this is a normal position that gets to be played for duty. Of course, again, jcarmody doesn't know what the handicap might be, so for all he knows, okay, we traded queens, whoop-de-doo, but duty's like, oh yeah, but your queen off the board is a much bigger deal because it's really like you traded your queen for my rook. So a good trade by duty there and a level game for him. I suspect we're going to see the stronger player here, probably even with the time advantage as jcarmody's time keeps going down. The fatigue of all those games for jcarmody is going to affect the quality of play. So I suspect that duty is going to have a much better time playing from this position than jcarmody with all things being equal like this. Let's check King 12 for life because I thought one of the handicaps that was in the simul, the one of the most unique ones anyway, King 12 for life, right? The king can only move if it's capturing. So that changes the way you approach this game, right? Because you can't move your king out of check. unless you're capturing. So you have to block checks or remove the pieces that are checking the king. You can't just move the king away. So that strategy that King 12 Life is playing here is basically keeping his king more than adequately protected, can't castle or anything, and just keeps it in the center and puts all of his pieces in the center around that king to make sure that anything that goes near his king and checks him can be captured in one way or another or blocked. So here we have our first check, and we block it with c3, and then we capture a pawn. The knight is going to develop to g3. We got b5. We're looking to probably expand a little further, maybe even over this move. We'll see. And we get g5 and saying, I want to attack on the king side here, maybe a little bit and weaken that up. And so we get a pawn exchange. The knight is going to capture instead of the bishop. Bishop still kind of serving that purpose, being able to block checks, looking at pawns, defending things. We don't want to keep our king empty-handed. And then after knight to e5, we got bishop e2. Again, controlling squares, wanting to not trade off pieces and potentially have issues on this the file here. And then after bishop b7, we got yummy, nummy, nummy. I got another pawn here I would like to take. Thank you so much. So we have a pawn advantage here. So, and I think this is where you see the simul fatigue starting to set in positions like this. So many positions you forget what's defended, what's not. I don't have a whole lot of time to check all of this, and pawn drops are more common. But thankfully, a pawn drop is not the worst thing that could happen in a position. So we got rook here attacking the queen. That's a nice one there. Yeah, I hope so. I hope jcarmody picks up the pace a bit here because I would hate to him to get a lot of time trouble games and then losing on time or other things like that. A lot of games left to play still, however, so it is a little worrisome. If we look at the scoreboard here, we got 24 games, active games still being played here, and only 4 results, 2-2 so far. So we'll see if some of these handicaps though start taking their toll on some of our opponents here for jcarmody. This game looks really interesting though with the king only being able to move if it's capturing. So really have to do extra duty to defend the king from long range attacks at least. All right, let's go to Scrooge. Now, Scrooge's handicap is their knights can never move backwards. So the knight leaves the 8th rank and it's on c6, and you won't see that knight ever returning to the 7th or 8th rank here. It can only go forward. So let's see how this goes. We had the knight a3, only square to keep it safe. So that's makes sense. We got bishop h3, looking to again trade off that Fairchild bishop a little bit, weaken up the king. Maybe the pawn starts running down the board. Oh, I hit a little something there. We go back. And so we get the knight going to do a little reroute potentially at some point somehow. Also maybe pushing this pawn at some point. We could bring perhaps the bishop over here, the rook over here. Long-term idea. We'll see what happens there. But h5, yep, gonna push this pawn down towards the board. Well, I think we're gonna see, we'll probably see the g pawn maybe moving down a little later too. But h pawn coming down the board, ooh, and offering to sacrifice and saying, hey, go ahead and take this pawn. I might be willing to part with the rook here to break open the king structure because I think I have a very good attack coming here with this knight unable to defend because the rook on e1. So we get the knight instead retreating. We got a pawn capture. The f pawn decides to capture back instead of the h pawn. Okay, good, interesting choice there. And now we might need to see this pawn kind of move away just so we get some more breathing room. I'm feeling like we're getting a little suffocated. The knight can also come back or even on f3. This knight struggling to get on this side of the board as well. The bishop can't really play on this side of the board. So we see some pieces from jcarmody having a little struggle. Oop, I forgot the board wasn't synced. So sync the board back up again so you guys can see what's going on. And yeah, wow, look at this. Very interesting indeed. And okay, so let's get some moves back here where we were. And we got the bishop's trade. Oh, wow. Yeah, this is going to be hard. King F3, E4 plus, drawing that king out of the board a bit, and also being able to maybe bring the knight, and especially, especially the knight coming in looks devastating here. Um, I'm not even sure where we play it. I think we have to bring the knight here, but then the knight's going to come check, and that's going to force the king back to the squares it doesn't want to go. So I think we're going to see Scrooge handling his handicap just fine with the tack on jcarmody's king, not even really using the knight. But when this one knight does come forward, it doesn't want to come back, and that's more than fine for them. So very good play over there. Let's go check in with Sakal's game. I don't think we have looked at any of this at all. I thought we did. Maybe we didn't. Okay. I thought for sure that we did. Okay, well, Sakal's is you can only capture your opponent's pawns with your pawns. So yeah, so only way to get rid of your opponent's pawns is with your own for Sakal. So I'm very confident we looked at some of this. But let's get back to game. Okay, so we get some exchanging there. We thought we were going to go for that. We did. And then, yeah, I think we left it here. So we had bishop g4 is the new moves there. And bishop e2 blocking that. The knight is coming in. Queen comes. Very safe, structured chess here going on. And now he's asking a question of the bishop. Do you want to hang back here? Do you want to take my knight? What would you like to do next? So putting a question to the bishop. But all pawns for black have to be captured by Sakal's pawn, so has to be careful. So, moves like this don't work as well, right? Because the pawn could capture and the rook won't be able to capture it back. So you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at your moves and your calculations because of that. And we do get one other ended game. It looks like Checkmate Insurance won, but this might have been something from previously. Let's check. This was the game where Checkmate Insurance, what was their handicap? I forget. The Checkmate Insurance was pawns always capture pawns even if en passant whenever they can. Okay, that's right. So pawns have to capture pawns. And so they had to capture here, and then nothing, nothing yet. They captured a pawn there for free, yay. And then they were able to get down. Okay, no pawns capturing, no threats. Ooh, because this is pinned. Uh-oh. Thankfully, the knight's there protecting for the moment, but oof, the bishop is coming in. Yeah, this is good. The king tries to get out of the pin, and the rook comes back. And then, uh-oh, uh-oh. Oops, we lost our cover, and we get a quick mate. Okay. All right. Wow, good find by Checkmate Insurance there. The rooks do their job. Very good. Hi, Curry Ship. Nice to see you drop by. Yeah, so let's look at the score right now and see if we have any updates. Doesn't look like we do. So it looks like that Checkmate Insurance was one of the two earlier games with uh, Mr. Scribbles that ended in the position there. So okay. So let's go back and keep at it with these games. A lot of chess, 24 games still in action. Let's check in on Silk Wander and see where we go with that. Uh, oh, looks like we lost a position for them as well. Okay, that's fine. Silk Wander, where was what was Silk Wander's? Oh, the rooks can't move when threatened. So this is one of the handicaps that will play a role later in the game. If jcarmody can try to get into, say, a rook endgame, this rook handicap will be devastating for Silk the Wanderer without being able to move a rook when it's under attack. So very tricky as the game progresses for that. So let's see how it goes. We got knight d2, e5. Some capturing going on. Ooh, very aggressive play. c5. Okay, grabbing some space. And this we got to be careful. So if you move, the argument is you're going to lose your bishop for the moment at least. So we get this knight move, hitting the queen, asking a question. Hey, you going to trade your bishop for my knight? What's going to happen? And that's what it did happen. And the pawn actually went and took here, not the knight coming back to hit the queen. So interesting choice from Silk the Wanderer, opening up this line because Silk the Wanderer has other ideas of maybe castling queenside, bringing the rook over here and saying, I think I got something cooking over on the king side here, so I will open the G file for my rook and get some activity there. So nice there. So let's check in with Tommy's game real quick. Tommy is if a pawn or a piece are under attack, you have to take the piece, not the pawn. So that's where we are right there. So let's go through the opening moves because we already went through that bit, and we see some aggressive play here. Everything kind of in the center, a little conservative now, just kind of taking some space. Knight D here. So again, the piece is under attack. There's no pawn in attack, so he can't have to take the piece yet, but he does anyway. Pawn is under attack. So where are we going here? We're going to just move the bishop away. Okay, so game is continuing. We'll probably see maybe something like f3, kick the knight away. Maybe later on preparing something like g4 if we're going to go after that king. We could also maybe prepare something with f4 as well, but I have a feeling f3 and kicking the knight is going to be more important in this position. You can also then look at bishop to h6, looking to trade off the dark square bishops as well once that knight is gone from g4. So maybe a f3 will be Tommy's move later on. We're going to see in his next couple moves what happens. Also notice we have a protected pass pawn on d5. This could come into nice play. Well, it's not pass pawn, but it's protected pawn here. The e pawn's still there, but if we ever get rid of the e pawn, it's protected pass pawn. But this could become a very good endgame asset later on as pieces come off the board. So something for both players to be aware of as well. And that's an interesting one as well. So very interesting games here and lots. My goodness, jcarmody is going to be so tired after this. I'm tired just looking at all these games and doing some very light commentary. I'm not even sure we could really call it too much commentary. There's not a lot I'm offering in terms of concrete lines, just kind of briefly looking at positions. But Mennonite had an interesting one too, I think. What was Mennonite's handicap? Your pawns, must move. Yes, must move 2 squares. So the first move, the pawn has to move 2 squares for Mennonite on any of his pawns. If it's the first pawn move for that pawn, they have to go 2 squares. Cannot go 1 square. So we got a lot of these positions here. We left this a little further back. Let's jump more towards that. Yeah, this was where we were looking at. Yep, with e6 here. Okay, so then what we had was a castle. We had queen e2, maybe looking to get just a little area space, but also just bringing the rooks and connecting them. And we got d4. Again, gobble gobble. I want my space. Thank you so much. A little daredevil here though, because this pawn looks a little bit weak here, so I'm not sure. Does this work? I don't know if it does. Oh, because we hit the queen, so we don't have time to go after the e4 pawn. So tactically it's okay, but the bishop is going to come in. Now the queen has to come in, bringing that second defender, but we have 3 attackers. Uh-oh. So do we lose this pawn? Or we're going to argue that we're trading pawns. Maybe that's the argument, yeah. Saying we'll trade him. So he goes c3 instead, and then after queen takes, my guess we're going to see is rook ad1, going after this pawn a little bit, even offering the a2 pawn, saying this pawn is far more dangerous to me. We also can try to snipe a pawn, but I feel like this opens lines that we don't necessarily want open with this pawn so close to promotion. So, and then we also leave this pawn hanging. So a lot of pawns potentially in the air here. We'll see how they all handle those. But remember, Mennonite, any of these pawns have to move 2 squares on their first move, right? No 1 square pawn move. So a move like this is okay, but you can't play a move like b6 to get out of this pawn or this bishop attack. So that might come into play a little later as well. Uh-oh, we got b3, but now we're dropping this pawn. So are we dropping here or arguing? I don't know about this. This pawn is going to be so dangerous. I would have happily have given up the a2 pawn, trying to get rid of the d3 pawn as fast as possible, bringing this rook over here, maybe this rook up over here, maybe the bishop if necessary, whatever is necessary to get rid of this pawn, because this pawn is the problem if it gets defenders and doesn't get liquidated off quickly here. So it could be a big problem for jcarmody if it hangs around too much. Okay, let's go to My Son Never Calls Me. The handicap for My Son Never Calls Me has two. He asked for two. His first one is he had to go 5 consecutive moves at some point during the game without capturing. He accomplished that in the opening by playing a very hyper modern type opening to make those moves and get that done, which they did. And then the big handicap, the original handicap that he took on, was his queen has to move like a bishop. So what we have is My Son Never Calls Me really has a very big second light squared bishop. And Jake Harmony does not know that. Might guess later on, but doesn't know that up front. So a big handicap for My Son Never Calls Me here. And so the game is progressing here. We get some pawn moves in the center. We see a little flank pawn just to gain a little bit of that space. Some pawn trades. I felt like this one is interesting because it might allow future expansion, but this could become a target. So it's kind of a double-edged one there. We'll see if it who gets to take advantage of what with it. But the knight retreats to e7, knight c4, and already I'm starting to like this position potentially. This is hard to push, but we get pressure on this pawn. What are we doing? We got two attackers on it. We bring back the knight to d7 to get both of those pieces defending it at once, holding on to that, I would think, a critical central pawn for Jake Harmony's position. And then we offer to get a nice pin here and put some more pressure on the position and say, hey, this diagonal may be a little bit better than this diagonal that it could get on. So a choice there doesn't go to say like e3, it goes to a3 and says, well, I want to pin this, maybe even get rid of this knight later on, depending. And then we get the move c5, which is where we left it, and nothing happening in this position overall here. Blocking that a little bit, offering an en passant though. And do we see an en passant? No. We saw knight at d6, threatening the bishop here, and then we have rook to b8. And this is the current live position, and we have My Son Never Called Me thinking a lot of time low on the clock, only 14 minutes on this clock right now, only 35 minutes. So you can see the time trouble going for Jake Harmony. All of his clocks just ticking, ticking, ticking with 20 some boards. This is crazy. That extra time he was given, 3 minutes per participant, evaporates so quickly. And we'll see what happens in this next move. Let's jump to Warvold's game a little bit. Hi, Tommy. Welcome back. Yep. So we'll see what happened in Warvold. So in Warvold's game, their handicap was you can't checkmate unless you have 3 knights on the board. So we're not going to see a checkmate by Warvold anytime soon. We need to at least promote one pawn to another knight minimally and keep our other 2 knights on the board if possible, or promote more pawns to more knights so he can get 3. But Jake Harmony doesn't know about that handicap, so he's just treating it like more or less any other game in this type of position. Ooh, did we drop a piece? I think we dropped a piece. Uh-oh. So in this position here, oops, we tried to make a quick castling move, but our knight was under attack. Uh-oh. And so we catch it back here. We're moving some more pieces. Okay. But we still have that issue of we have to get at least one more knight in the position. And so are we going to get some more trades? See, we don't necessarily want to trade, right? We want to keep our knight. Warvold wants to keep as many knights on the board as long as possible. So we don't want to see that trade. And they go after the bishop. The knight's going to come back. And then we're going to harass the bishop here. So the bishop comes back. Interesting to see how this will get played. 6 pawns means we can make potentially 6 knights still. So with 2 knights still on the board. So we only need one more to then go and deliver a mate if we want to. So Warvold's going to have to manage that a little bit. But I think he's doing just fine right now. He is up a piece. And very solid position as well with that extra piece. All right, let's jump into Yizgwid's, and I believe, what was their one? I don't remember. Yizgwid's one is, sack your rook, which is what they already accomplished. So they were able to sacrifice their rook before move 20, and they did that there, so they accomplished that. And then, we do get the good job by Jake Harmony spotting the tactic here. And so we see the pawn takes. Oh no, he missed the knight. No, he missed the knight. Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh no, jcarmody. We missed our free knight. We could have been up a knight. Oh, but we got it now. Hey, both sides missed that this knight was hanging for a move. Wow, cool. Okay, so let's see what happens. Queen d7. All right, so a fairly uh, difficult game for Yizwin now, but clock could become a pressure as the clock keeps ticking so much more for jcarmody than it will for Yizwin. So a piece, an entire rook up at this moment. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So an entire rook for jcarmody. So good prospects to play for a win here. Probably bishop e3, just putting a defender, saying let's trade more stuff if you want to win a pawn in that route. That's fine. Allow me to bring my rook into the game or something like that. But an advantage for jcarmody. Does he have the time though to finish that game? We'll see. Let's go to Jonas' game. Jonoff had a you must move your first three pawns must spell fab. And I remember that they did do that. So they were able to get fab on the board with a 6b5 and f5 there. And then we got kind of like a little Dutch game going, and we had some pressure here. Oh, we offered an exchange. We said, hey, go ahead and take my rook. I want the knight. But can we? Yeah, we can get more than that. We can say, hey, I can attack your knight and your rook at the same time here. Now what are you going to do? So the knight says, okay, well then I'll just block. That's a good find to get out of it. I like that. Good job by jcarmody. And then holding on to this pawn here. This pawn could become a very interesting attacking pawn later on, especially with the queen coming here. I love the ideas of this, so maybe I will play something like this soon, offering to you to take my pawn, bringing the queen in, and then this looks pretty good, especially with the rook coming in. I like this idea for jcarmody. We'll see what happens there. The bishop comes back, attacking the pawn there, or I mean for Jonoff rather, and then Jonoff pushing the pawn forward. Okay, putting pressure, saying go ahead and grab this. I would like to mobilize both my pawns, perhaps? Is that what they're suggesting? I don't know. jcarmody very low on the clock though. 20 some minutes is going to go by very fast if you have all these boards that are in play. In fact, let's quickly check in and see where we are with that. We are still at 24 boards playing. Oh my goodness, this is going to be so tough for jcarmody when the clocks are ticking down even further and we still have all of these games in play. Wow. Okay, so let's see. This was an interesting game. No handicap in this game here. So a normal game of chess being played, and Pineapple Chiffon doing a good job of getting development, getting in the center, fighting for some of that space. jcarmody also doing a good job putting their pieces on. We have an isolated pawn over here, some interesting knight here, especially I wonder if we can start putting pressure there one direction, or maybe just put pressure this way, I don't know. But there's some ideas in there, but we could also just simply keep developing. In this position here, he goes after this knight and saying, hey, you have one defender, but I have two attackers on this knight, so what are you going to do? And they decide to bring the knight back and offer to just exchange queens. But Pino says, I'll develop instead. Now that the bishop can't take here and break my pawn structure, I'm okay developing my knight. If you want to take my queen, that's fine, because then I get to develop my rook to d8 in taking it back. So we have the bishop coming here, also good. Opening up the rooks a little more here, putting a nice pin on this queen, at least temporarily. And that's where the position stands at the moment. Pineapple with 14 minutes, but jcarmody started out with like almost 2 hours and is down already under 25 minutes on that clock. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, let's see where we got going with Narwolf. Okay, this is going to be an interesting game. About same near ratings to each other, but Jake Harmony's playing a simul. So they have a big time advantage, but they also have a massive disadvantage with playing 28 games at the same time. So I think Narwhal gets the advantage off of this game as a result. And oh no, wait, incorrect. Narwhal took they did take a handicap, and their handicap was the A and the E pawns cannot go past the fourth rank. That's right. I almost forgot about that. And so we see a huge pawn side expansion, and ooh, thank you for that pawn. And then they simply bring the bishop back. Okay, we've got another pawn move capturing. All right, thank you for another pawn here, and we're getting we're getting some hits, some activity. I really like Narwhal's play here. I think they're doing a great job taking what's given, having all this space. Their king's in the center, but nothing's opened up just yet. And after bishop c6, we got queen to e3, knight a6, and then knight takes, and saying, ooh, when you moved your knight, you gave me your bishop. So, uh-oh, here we go. We are up a piece in the position, and the time is so low for Jake Harmony. I feel like Jake Harmony might need to make, and this might be one of those where you, as you have more simul experience, when there's so many games left in play, any of the games that you know you're losing, you should just resign and get them off your docket so you can focus on the other games. I think that's what I would be doing if I was Jake Harmony here with such low time and so many more games still in play is say, okay, if I'm significantly down on material, I'm just going to resign those games and get them off my docket. Okay, so this one was against Echo. Echoes has a very interesting handicap. Their bishops can never capture all game. So Echo did a very interesting opening, and he plays this strange looking H5 move, and you're like, what in the world are you doing? But he had a plan, and his plan here was he's playing the bishop over here, and he wants jcarmody to trade on h6 and get rid of one of his bishops. So he puts the bishop on h6, and jcarmody doesn't take it. And he's like, ah. So he brings a knight out, and he says, look, now if you take it, I can't castle. Don't you want to take my bishop? And jcarmody, who doesn't know what the handicap is, says, no, I'm good, and develops their knight on c3 instead. So then we get c6, rook e1, and the other bishop comes out, which of course the bishop cannot capture, just sitting there at the moment. And then we get knight e5. Now in a normal game of chess, this would be cool, and I like the knight, it's centralized, whatever. But Echo's like, you know what? Both of my bishops could be captured at any time, and I want my bishops to be captured. So this is great for me. And so we bring the knight here, and again, asking the question with this knight, don't you want to capture my bishop? Or you could capture this bishop. Please take my bishops. And in this moment, Jake Harmony, not knowing what the handicap is, said, sure, let's grab both bishops and get them off the board. And Echo probably was jumping up and down for joy that he got his bishops off the board, and his handicap is no longer in the game. So we get queen to d2, hitting the rook, and we left it right around here, I believe. Yeah, e4 I think maybe is where we left it. And we get this bishop exchange, and okay, queen c7. Yeah, that makes sense. That's where we left it. And then queen to e7, castling, which is what I thought we were going to do. We're going to see, but I think the rooks need a double on the h file, I think was the plan. So we'll see if that happens here, but it is now Echo's turn to move in this position. Exactly, Tommy. Some that you might be down material, or it might look objectively that the position is low, but knowing that people have crazy handicaps, especially the higher rated players, you're kind of like, I might be winning for all I know. Yeah, so that could also be totally the case. You're right that you want to keep all the games in play, especially against higher rated players, because you don't know what their handicap could be. You could be winning the game due to a handicap that you don't fully know. So let's go to Montegral Tigers game and see where we left this one. This was a game, there was no handicap in this game, so it's just a chess game, and a very nicely played chess game. Montegral did a good job of getting pieces developed, got a little bit of space, and Jake Harmony fought back by playing h6, g5, kicking that bishop back, bringing the knight in, and putting some pressure in the center. Rook e1. We're going a6, looking for b6 potentially. Again, using the pawns to kind of gain space and fight back in the center. And then we have bishop e2. Okay, what was bishop e2? Are we looking maybe to do a reroute and saying play b5 and weaken that diagonal for me, please? And instead we get knight to d5. And so the bishop comes in. Oh, looking, maybe asking a question here. Hmm, okay. And then we get a knight exchange. The pawn comes back over here, and we're asking a question to the knight, saying, hey, I'm attacking you twice and you're only defended once. Are you playing c6? Are you playing bishop to c6? Are you going to take my knight and damage my pawn structure a little bit? What are you going to do? But again, the problem I think is Jake Harmony about equal time to Montegal Tiger. 18 minutes to 18, which when you have 20 other games in play, 18 minutes is going to fly by, and so that's basically blitz at this moment with all those games. All right, Rob W's game. We ended off here, and we had Queen D7. All right, so we're going to get some expansion. Yep. Oh, and this is where, yeah, right. I think over here is where we left off. And we got an en passant. Okay, so we did en passant, get rid of that huge pawn wall developing. And then we played a move with knight to D5, putting a question here and saying, I can fork your king and queen. What are you going to do about it? And we get the reply, queen b7, defending the pawn. Okay, that's when we go there, and we got bishop g5, putting more pressure. It still wants the bishop in there. Okay. Oh, and that is going to cost jcarmody some material there. Again, with so many games, so many positions having to look at, your brain just starts not seeing everything correctly at times and just forgetting where things are, and you don't have a lot of time to look at all the positions carefully too. So yeah, blunders like this could happen, although I'm not sure why we gave the rook up. I would have defended the rook with the queen somehow so that I could recapture the bishop. Uh, oh, wild. Going to hit another piece and go for that. All right. And he says, "Yeah, you know what? I'm going to bring my queen back. I want to keep my king a little safe. Now, what are you doing with your bishop?" And he says, "I still don't care about my bishop on h3. Go break your king pawn structure. I'm going to attack the bishop on d5 again. Bishop a2, and now I'm attacking the other bishop again, leaving my bishop on h3. Go ahead and take it, please." And Montegal Tiger says, "Nope, nope, not going to do that. Not going to do that." Okay, we attack the queen. Queen goes to e2, and now our bishop comes in. Wait, is this a sacrifice for what? It's not protected. Uh-oh, what are we doing? Uh-oh, Drake Army, I think you forgot that the bishop is not protected. Although I guess where else do you go, right? It's under threat, and you had no squares. Interesting. Mm, yeah, I don't know what you would do in that position, but okay. So, queen takes, rook d2, putting some pressure, but not a lot of pieces left, and our bishop, not a lot of scope. Rook d2 and saying, I'm up so much material at this point, I will happily trade, which is always a good strategy from Rob W. So good job, Rob W, taking advantage where you're given. Very interesting. All right. Astrakhan here. Let's see what is going on with this game. Where did we leave it at? I think we left it somewhere over here. We had the exchange. We had g5. Oh yes, it's the knight. Yeah, and this is where we weren't sure. The knight had a nice square. Okay, and then ooh, we're attacking here and saying, you know, if I lose a pawn here, I'm okay because you take my knight, I'm going to take your bishop. Yeah, and then your knight is under attack. And I open up some lines on your king, so the bishop goes to b7 too. And then he says, "Oh well, I like this." Is also undefended, and this is a nice diagonal for my bishop here. And so the other knight comes back to defend the knight. Interesting. All right, holding everything together. Now this knight is happy. Bishop is on a good diagonal. jcarmody's improving pieces. We got some space on the king, on white's king, to potentially come down the board. This knight probably needs to find another home. Probably having to go long roads, but something there. And let's see how the game progresses. We have a knight here. Are we going after tat? I don't think we can do something like that. I'm not sure what we're going for here. Okay, we got the rook, knight. Yeah, okay, knight takes. Yeah, but see, you don't win the pawn still. See that bishop was in knight was a very good duel over here, and that was going to buy jcarmody time to start going after white's king, I think. So I think he should have kept those pieces there. White's position was looking quite stuck, but the knight goes back to f4. Still a good position here for jcarmody, I believe. Don't think we need to be moving the knight around though. Let's leave the knight there for now. I don't think we need to push the knight up further. Okay, the bishop's going to reroute. Ooh, locking up. So this is where tactically, and not if it wasn't a simul, I bet I would have seen jcarmody looking at this move and playing b4, opening lines to the king if possible. So I think this is a case of one of those, I'm playing a simul, I'm running a low on time, I'm just trying to play moves that look okay and not looking at those type of ideas. So c4, shutting down that bishop a little bit here. Now we need to go a5 to play b4 later on. So a little slower on this one, but knight g2. So we're looking to do a reroute potentially. Also looking maybe to bring bishops in. The knight goes back to f4. Good idea. The bishop comes in. Now are we going to see this doesn't work? So I think we lose the exchange here, unfortunately, because this move leads to en passant check and the queen is gone. So hopefully f5 doesn't get played and we accept that the rook is going to be lost. Maybe we bring our queen somewhere over to b7 in the interim so that when we capture back, and again looking maybe to go on the attack, especially with the knight able to quickly jump in and assist while the white pieces are not quite aligned at the moment, but they could spring in action quickly too. So both sides could jump at each other's king quite quickly. Hey, Duty, how ya doing? Hope you had a good game. I haven't had time to go back into it. Looked like you were doing well. You got rid of your handicap just fine. Let's go to David's game and see where we are with that. David's game was somewhere around here, I think. Six, yeah, we're around there. We made some exchanges, okay, and then yes, this was where we are going to lose that pawn. So that's where we left it. So the bishop went back, the queen goes back, and David says, okay, thank you for the pawn. Now I'm going to harass the queen a little bit. I'm going to bring my rook to d1, and maybe later on there's going to be some ideas here, because if the pawn takes, we're going to capture here and then put pressure on that backwards looking pawn potentially as well. So rook d8 gets played, and now we stuff the position and we say your rook is temporarily imprisoned here because you can't play your bishop move here and you got to move your rook. So where is it going to go? So rook b8, jcarmody says, yeah, I'm saving the rook. I'm Noah. Now I'm going to trade off the bishop. And David says, yeah, but I like the light square bishop of mine, so I don't think we will trade. I'll move it back. And then the king, king goes to h7. I'm not sure what that move does. What was that? I am not sure. Yeah. So what looked like a normal queen trade was a huge trade because it was their queen for essentially an extra rook of yours. Yeah. So that was a really good idea by you. And again, jcarmody didn't know the handicap, so trading off the queens didn't seem like a problem or a big deal, but really it solved your problems quite nicely. So we have h4 going in the board, and this is looking like a level game, but jcarmody with all the boards being played is at a pretty big disadvantage. So David should have a big edge in this game as jcarmody essentially playing blitz with all these games still in play right now. And if we look at the score page right now, we still see 24 games looks like to be in play, which means no games have ended yet, which I find incredible, by the way. Um, that there's still, okay, no, we need to update. So we do have some more to play. I thought there were some less games here. So three more losses. So two wins, five losses for Jay Conner, but still 21 games in play and not a lot of time left on that clock. So interesting there. And it looks like my page got stuck. So let's do that again. See if I can update the page. It doesn't look like it's updating, so that's weird. My page got a little stuck there. Preparing bishop h6 with king h7 there. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so this is going to be an interesting one with that. So, yep. Okay, so back to the games we got here. We have Simar. What was Simar's handicap? Was egg, and they accomplished that in the opening. So we left them at somewhere over here where we were attacking the knight, and they ended up going ahead and trading off, and then we get a lash out move here with h4, trading those, and it looks like we're going to see Saimara going after that king a little bit now too, and saying, hey, there comes the queen. Uh-oh. Queen d3 is still losing pieces, right? Uh-oh, uh-oh. So Munch there. All right, and another game where Jay Carmen, I think the time and all the games and positions being played influenced the play greatly. I will be very interested to hear afterwards how he thought about the simul. My guess he's going to say is way too many games, not enough time, and I'm exhausted. The game by King A2, King 12 life is going to be really interesting because of his handicap. King life handicap is his king can only move when it's capturing, and that changes the game considerably. But let me run through a couple of the last games that are still being played real quick. We had a game going here. This one was not a handicap game, by the way. So we see a winning a pawn here early on with pawn 2020, kicking the knight back, and then stopping this pawn here. And I think we're going to see the bishop trying to infiltrate a little bit here. So we'll see how that goes. The knight comes back here. We get a trade and then f4. Okay, and then takes, and yeah, some pressure on the king, but I think we have enough to hold. For starters, we can put a check here. We could even just grab the knight entirely, right? Why can't we just grab this knight? This might have been a mistake. Oops. Oops. Oh no, my knight. Uh-oh. So I think jcarmody, but jcarmody's so low on the clock with 10 minutes. This isn't a lot of time to finish these games. My goodness. Okay, let's jump to Intertemporal's game real quick. And we left over here, I believe. And we got the check. So Intertemporal's handicap was they can't move any of their pieces in the opponent's territory until their king was checked. So we finally got a check on the king. That means this is a normal chess game for Intertemporal right now. Of course, again, jcarmody not knowing that. So we get a trade over here, another knight, just more trades going on, and Intertemporal basically saying, I am happy to trade everything if you want. And we're going to get into an endgame situation, it looks like. But he did snag a pawn. So he snagged that pawn. And it's the bishop pair uh, and the pawn. So, right, we got 6. And so the bishop here and a pawn should be enough for intertemporal, especially again, huge time advantage as well. And it's a normal chess game. All right, AACT control, AA control, AT. I don't know where T came in. AA control. A control's position was, our handicap is, their bishops can no longer move after move 20, if I recall. So they played a hyper modern, and they had a good strategy as well, where they said, guess what? I'm going to trade off these knights. They're our bishops. Now I took your knights away for my bishops, but now my bishop handicap that I have, I don't have to worry about it. So after move 20, because there's no bishops on the board. And we're just going to play a chess game. And then we had, oops, this idea by jcarmody would work with the knight captures, you lose the queen, but I can capture your queen first and then I pick up the bishop. So down a piece here for jcarmody in this position here. But we get some more moves, some attacks. And again, jcarmody not knowing what A controls handicap is, he has no idea if he's actually losing. He, for all he knows, maybe he's going to be winning. Maybe he has a handicap where, the pawns can't capture, the rooks can't capture, or something to that effect. Like he doesn't know. So playing it on because, he doesn't know if maybe he has a better position than what's actually on the board. So let's go with King 12 life and see where they were at. King 12 life, King 12 life cannot move their king unless they are capturing with it. So we see this buildup of pieces here. I think we left it off around this move. I think it was something around here, yes. And he takes the pawn. And then we have the rook captured or going to d8, the queen going to c2. Yeah, Tommy's game is going to be interesting as well. Yeah, going to c2. The rook goes back to c1, hitting this bishop again. Do we see a b5 move or b4? I don't know. We do see b4, and then the queen goes to a6. So hanging on a little bit there. King for life. Then pushing the H pawn, putting a defender over here, but mostly looking to push and open up some lines and go after the black king potentially before more pieces get traded, for example. And now we're targeting this pawn, and so we probably see rook or pawn up, right? And jcarmody decides to move the pawn. So now the bishop comes back because we really don't want to lose a pawn in this trade in here. So we bring the bishop back, covering square, putting some pressure over here. And now the bishop comes in, putting some pressure on this knight a little bit. So f4 gets played because he's still trying to play moves like this, or even potentially f5 itself. Because again, if you take, I swoop in for a quick game-ending attack, most likely. So the knight comes back here instead, saying, I really want to trade off this knight, but I actually would like this bishop to also protect dark squares. So we have to be careful of that as well. So this is the time that King for 12 life says it's time to open up the king's position while we're in here. Ooh, but see the knight comes back. I don't think this is good because H takes G and ooh, we're getting attacks. We're getting all sorts of stuff. This is going to get weakened. Oh boy, this could be bad for jcarmody. That clock, 6 minutes and 37 seconds counting. So many games still in play with no time for jcarmody. This is going to be very, very hard for them. In fact, let's look at the scoreboard here real quick here. And I got, yeah, still 21 games in play. This is incredible for a lot of games that still have to be, moves still have to be played in so many games with such a low clock. It is becoming bullet mode for jcarmody at this point. I mean, there's going to be a lot of timeouts at this rate if some of these games aren't resolved. Okay, so going to Sakal's game, we get more trades coming back here, and it looks like Sakal's just happy to trade these positions here. In fact, I forgot what was Sakal's handicap? Sakal's is you can only capture your opponent's pawns with your own. So Sakal can only capture pawns with his pawns. So that's the one thing he has to be careful of. So he goes for more pawn trades. Yep. and says, "Oh, I get a check, okay," and then captures. And normally you capture here, but Sakala can't capture the pawn with his queen because only a pawn can capture, only his pawns can capture his opponent's pawn. So instead, he says, "Okay, I'm going to put some pressure over here." And then the knight comes in, putting, yeah, low clock time, and oops, oops, we're losing a queen. We're losing a queen. All right, Silk the Wanderer game. Uh, the knight comes in. Okay, let's see what we got here. Silk the Wanderer is uh, the rooks, something with the rooks. Silk the Wanderers was rooks can't move when threatened. So this is one of those where the end game could be a problem if the rooks are on the board. When the rooks are threatened, they can't move. So he doesn't want his rooks under threat, and he is going for the attack and saying, yes, I'm going to end this game before this rook business even becomes a problem. And we see a check is the current position here. The king having to go to f8 at the moment. I'm not sure what I play here. Do I play c4 stuff? Maybe not. Maybe I have something better. What do I have that might be better? I don't know. Probably just even grabbing the pawn and allowing the pawn to go down the board would be good enough. We'll see what happens. Let's look at Tommy's games. Tommy, if he has a choice between a pawn or a piece being if he can take a piece or a pawn at the same time, he always has to take the piece. He cannot take the pawn. That is his handicap. So he's playing more of a conservative approach, doesn't want a lot of things under attack. Go ahead and grab piece, so no pawn. He's threatening to take a pawn, but he's not threatening a piece or anything like that. Okay, now he has to take the piece, so he does. Okay, brings the queen back, and then g5. So again, a pawn under attack, but no pieces. So he can freely go after the pawn because no pieces are under attack. Knight e2. Very interesting position as well with an attack brewing with Tommy's position here. So we'll see how this plays out a little bit. But again, you have to be mindful of the handicap and how that can influence things. You got to be careful with you threatening a pawn and a piece at the same time, because that means you have to capture whatever the piece is. So that changes a lot of the dynamics. It is a very interesting handicap for Tommy, yes. Because I think the harder handicaps are the ones that last throughout the game more like this, rather than piece specific handicaps, right? Because, like example, we have handicaps with the bishops. Okay, so the plan, get rid of the bishops. Handicap's over, right? With this, you can't get rid of it. It's there the entire game. Similar to Sakal's, like the pawn can only take your opponent's pawns. Your pieces can't take their pawns. It's there the entire game, and you have to continually work around it and factor it in. So I think that is one of the uh, interesting aspects of the handicaps when they're persistent in the game like that, and you can't easily resolve them, or it's not easy to understand how to resolve them. Okay, so Mennonites won. Now, Mennonites handicap was your pawns must move 2 squares on their first move. Always 2 squares on the first move. And so we see with all these pawns on the board that Mennonite's going to have to throw his pawns forward 2 squares if they ever move initially. And this pawn was going to be a problem, I thought, for jcarmody. So let's see how it lands. Ooh. There's there's a problem. And I think time pressure really caused a problem for jcarm in this position here. Yeah, so this is a position where, okay, I am up a piece and for a pawn, it looks like, and he's setting up a discovered attack. So 3 minutes on the clock for jcarmody. I mean, this is insane. Bullet chess for a simul. Yeah, it does contradict Tommy's style a little bit too, right? Because you want to play a certain way and you're having to adjust your style. I think that Elo Stilo is a wonderful concept for a simul. Like I think it's makes for some very interesting games, especially when your opponent doesn't know what it is because they can't fully take advantage of it necessarily. They just know you have a handicap of some kind. They don't know exactly what it is, so it just makes the games very interesting. We did have one move which in this game, which was knight takes b7, so we will see an exchange of that, assuming jcarmody is able to quickly play and get through these games to the next one. And then Warvold's game, we had some moves here. Now, Warvold is the one that has to have three knights on the board before delivering checkmate. So you can see Warvold trying to keep the knights on the board if best as possible, avoiding those trades if possible. So giving away that pawn. Ooh, piece for a pawn? Is that what we gave away? Yeah. What happened here? Okay. Oh, because missing the, oops. Yeah, pieces are going. All right. So he decided to keep the knights on the board because he needs three knights. Oh, randomly attacked there. Yeah. Okay. And then, oops, the check means you don't win the exchange back. Uh-oh. All right. So again, time pressure is insane for jcarmody at this point. Very insane. Hey, Julio. Nice to see ya. Thanks for stopping by. First time chatter. And hi, Bree1. Your 500 elo, please help. Well, I am sure people can help. I would love to finish my game. I know, taught me, right? I know. Be an interesting game. So, your both here. We got orcs. All right. Pawn captures, takes back. Okay. So, Yizwid's handicap was they had to sacrifice their rook, I believe, before move 20, and they did that early on f4. Then they had an interesting game on there. So it looks like we just get some maneuvering around. jcarmody just trying to find safe moves at this point, quick safe moves, which is a good idea. But well, I think we got our bishop trapped. Yep. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Yeah, I think the biggest problem with this is there were so many people that played the simul, and we probably should have adjusted jcarmody's time with that many boards. That's just not enough time to play all these boards. Like, it's just, yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. So I think we're going to see some timeouts happy here. All the clocks are getting very, very low for jcarmody. But it's a first time simul, right? And we did not expect all these people showing up, and I think that's the factor. So we'll have to make sure they adjust for that in the future simuls, because unfortunately, I think a lot of these games are going to be called simply off of time. There's just not enough time for jcarmody to make all these moves with so many boards still in play. We have a lot of boards actually still in play, right? Let's update, see. We still have 20 boards in play with not a lot of time on the clock. Yikes. Yeah, that is hard. Very hard to do this. With 20 boards on the clock and you're down to a couple minutes in many of these games, I think we're going to see some timeouts, unfortunately, but a good experience and a great turnout for the simul here. We see this game developing with some good moves. It looks both sides really kind of keeping all their pieces together. Um, Threatening queen, we got to make sure we keep our knight defended. But I know a lot of these moves were played very quickly by jcarmody here towards the end here, so it wouldn't surprise me if again we get maybe an oops, made a mistake here or there. In this case here, for example, we left with the bishop d5. So an interesting position in this one if there was some more time on the clock, but I feel that jcarmody is going to have to blitz these moves out in bullet style potentially. So we'll see what happens in with that. All right, let's see what we got for the moves here is Narwolf, believe we have a result. Narwolf ended up winning. Was it through time or just, oh, takes? And it looks like jcarmody says, all right, that's not going to work for me. Yeah, because it still had a minute on the clock, so I'm not sure why this one ended right away. We're going to take this rook, but maybe just a lot of the pieces. So let's see. Yeah, I think this is a fairly equalish. I don't see it. Not sure. Not sure at all. Okay, what happened in this one here? This was a great attacking one. Uh, Echoes couldn't couldn't capture with their bishops. Found a unique way to trade them off very quickly. And then playing a normal game of chess, playing kind of aggressive, going after the king. But I again feel like we're not going to have enough time here, and a lot of games are going to get timed out. Be interesting to see what that one ends up as. jcarmody won the important game. He beat me in the league today. Okay, hey, how you doing, JW? JDW? Yeah, I think the main issue was we had so many people turned out to play, and not enough time for him to make all those games because he had 28 games. 28 people turned out. The biggest simul event we've had yet. I think the previous record was 19. Um, and he only had 3 minutes plus per participant with a 30-30 time control, and that's clearly not enough with all these. But it was his first time simul as well, so we didn't expect to see how these many players. And yeah, now we know you need a lot more time when you have that many people showing up. And we get the rook coming in here. I'm just playing through some of these moves, seeing interesting. We got bishop f3, hitting the queen over here. Queen c8, again, safe moves. And the problem, again, 26 seconds. So a lot of timing out and resigns, I think, or if not resignations, are happening here, unfortunately. Um, we're just not having the time. And we get the here. Okay, the knight, yeah, back and forth a little bit. The knight gets to a really good square, but this knight also gets to a nice square. We get a capture now, and a fork is happening. All right, so a little material there, and we kind of even the material back out a bit, but still a dangerous attack coming over here. And the knight is coming. Oh, we sack a rook. I don't know if we need to do that, but yeah, this isn't good. Oh, but he missed. Did he miss a? No, maybe he didn't miss a faster mate. I thought he had a faster mate, but no. Never mind. Oh yeah, that pawn. Uh, going to deliver, and this is pinned, so you can't do any blocking. There's two attackers on there anyway. Yeah, king comes out. Probably this move, that move. You can win. Yeah, take there. It all wins. Again, low clocks, no way you can keep playing with these mini games with such a low clock in a simul event like this in different positions. All these different games, all these different positions. Very tough for jcarmody on this. Very tough indeed. So looking to just make moves on the board with the low clocks. And unfortunately, quite a bit of them uh, getting on the timeout, but he's fighting in some of them still. Not timed out all of them here. Ooh, there we go. Got a fork there, so we get a little material back, but man, this is interesting with now remember these rooks, if they're under attack, they can't move. That is Silk's problem. So now if there's less pieces on the board, makes it a little harder. He has to be careful with those rook handicaps and the current queen to h5 plus on the board, but these rooks are looking to try to get in the action without being under attack. Until you have a couple of minutes. Oh, that's nice of you, Tommy. I've done that before in some simuls to give them time to play some of the other games a little bit. We only have one move in here. Queen to c7 is the last one here. Not capturing the knight back. Again, just making instant moves probably. Trying to just get the pieces back in the board. So totally understandable. Well, Warvold had some moves. Warvold had a decent amount of moves actually. Capturing the knight. Remember Warvold has to have three knights on the board before delivering a checkmate. So now he needs 2 knights before he can deliver a checkmate in this position, but does have a material advantage, huge clock advantage as well. And I think they also are allowing their clocks to just run for a little bit, giving them time to play some of the other positions. One move here, just a capturing back over here. Not capturing with the rook, but this is under pressure here now. So we should see some material being gained. Yep. And I don't know really where you do the rook. Do you want to go here or you want to go here? Pressure or try to hold the file? Not sure. Also, can I do this maybe? Idea take take. Oh, oh, didn't see that one though. Yeah, exactly. And that's probably not necessarily jcarmody's fault because we had so many people join. The time control was not sufficient for 28 games, you know. And it was their first simul too, so it's not like they're experienced with managing time. Like I said, maybe resigning some positions where you're losing and you just need to get some games off the table and things like that. So it's very hard for them to play a simul like this with 20 boards. This is asking a lot. I don't know if I would play it very well either with this time control and 28 boards. I think when I did mine, I had something like 11 or 12 maybe. The important thing David says is that I did not lose on time or by mate. How you doing, David? Nice to see ya. Yeah, this is very hard for fast time control like this because when you think about how much time he has on the clock compared to all those clocks running, 28 boards means that at any given time he's got over 20 games with his clock running. So if you say, "Hey, you have 2 hours," that is not a lot of time to play 20 games of chess simultaneously like that because you lose so much time without even looking and making moves on a board, any given board. You need like double that time probably to play 28 with any sort of effectiveness and have time to actually look at the positions and stuff like that. So probably what he needs to do is either put more time on the board when you have like plus 20 players and stuff, or cap them and say, okay, we're you know you can only have a max of whatever, how many players, 20, 15, something. Next go, we should have 10 minutes. Yeah, well, it even the opponents, uh, the simul person is what needs more of the time, not necessarily the opponents, because again, his time was going low. It didn't really matter what his opponent's time were necessarily. His clocks were just running too much. I mean, 20 some boards with their clocks running all the time. You're losing so much time while you're going through those games. Like you just need more time on your clock to have that, or you have to have less boards. You can't have 28 boards with this amount of time. So it is not shocking, especially if you're not being able to play super fast. And again, knowing games you can resign quickly, like, oops, I blundered a piece, I resigned this. And with the handicaps, it makes sense why you don't want to resign as many of the games either, because again, you don't know what their handicap is. You could still be actually better even in a normal chess position due to a handicap offset. So very hard to make all those judgment calls. And this is very Jonoff is actually this is one of those games where Jake Harmony is doing quite well and just needs more time on the clock, right? All things being equal. Um, you know, 2, 4, 5 pawns. He's even up a pawn here, you know. Bishop's paired. This is an interesting game. We'll see if Jonoff, well, Jonoff's low on the clock too. We'll see if Jake Harmony is able to hold on to the time to keep playing it. Gonna double check in to see where, oh, this one was resolved. Okay, so yeah, oops, knight moved, allowing the mate. That's too bad. This had an interesting handicap. King can't move unless it's capturing. That was an interesting handicap. Okay, Silk the Wanderer game's still going. We have King F8. The rook is going to take over the G file. No rook's under attack, so they can still move. The queen doesn't want to trade, gives a check. Uh-oh, uh-oh. The rook can't move. Look at this. This is where the handicap comes into play. Rook takes queen would be automatic, except the rook is under attack by the queen, therefore it cannot move. and it's stuck. So bishop comes in and gives the check instead, and then we get king to g8. Now, this should be your telltale sign for if I'm jcarmody, except of course we're blitzing, so bullet really. So he's not having time to look, but this would be a telltale sign. Hey, there's something funky with the rooks for a handicap because this is a very strong player and he missed winning my queen for the rook here. So like, what's going on with that, right? That would tell me that maybe something's going on with the rooks, like the rooks can't actually capture or things like that. Yeah, exactly. Queen takes f6 also doesn't work. Yeah, Tommy, the increment, I don't think, unless you have like a several minute increment, I don't think the increment would be as helpful. What he needs is a bigger bank of time. Instead of like, what did he have, an hour and 40 some minutes or something? He needed like 2.5 hours or something like that. He needed a bigger bank of time. So that's what I think would happen on that one. Um, he just needs some more time on that for that many boards. So King Queen F8. Let me look at Tommy's game real quick. How are we going along? We got a couple more moves. Okay. Yep. Very interesting. Uh, okay. Can't take there. All right. So still holding on there. Mennonites. Unfortunately, looks like it was a flag. Was that it? Or just resigned? I can't tell. There was still time on the clock. I think Jay Carmi just said, "Fooey with that game. I'm down material." Okay, playing here. All right, and then oh, he's still playing on with this one. Oh, yeah. Again, having to play such fast moves, very hard to make good moves on the board. Okay, will do, Echo. Thank you for stopping in. Yep, yep. We will see how that goes there, but Jay Carmi is going to be very tired after this stream. I'm very sure. So we get some moves, yes, and then a second. Yeah, this is the way to go and say, hey, making moves on the board here with Warvold. So this is where it goes back to Warvold. Warvold needs 3 knights and he has 5 pawns. So 3 pawns have to be promoted to knights before he can deliver checkmate. So this is where it comes these handicaps come into play a little bit, right? This looks like a very easy, straightforward win, and then you go, wait a second, I got to make sure I have enough pawns to promote to knights. I can't just trade pawns with these pawns. I got to keep my pawns so I can promote them to 3 knights and then go checkmate. All right, let's see how Jonas' game doing. This was a very equal game, and we do get a rook trade. A lot of fast moves being played. Okay, still hanging on. Has not flagged yet. Both sides very low on the clock though. So Jonas is going to have to. Oh yeah, we have a lot more of flags out. So let's jump back to this one and see how this is progressing. Where okay, we do get a queen trade, and the rooks. So yeah, wow, this is going to be a very tough game for Silk the Wanderer because those rooks as soon as they're being threatened, he can't move them, right? That makes this game so much harder for him because he has to figure out, oh, and his last one goes. Oh no. Now he has to deal with 2 rooks that can't really do a whole lot when they're under threat. So very careful. He does have a lot of pawns though. That's going to help. He can play a lot with the pawns and he has passed pawns and everything. So pawn mass here is going to be very good and crucial for him. But 2 pieces for the rooks. But if jcarmody knew that these rooks couldn't move if they're under threat, it would make it very, very difficult, I think, for Silk the Wanderer. Still an equal game. Yeah, that'd be fine. How you doing, Psych Mark? Yeah, I feel bad for Jake Carmi about the time because again he started having to play super fast, and you could tell in the games he was making more mistakes and flagging quite a bit of these games eventually and stuff like that. So it's one of those he needed more time with 28 boards. I am shocked that we had 20 boards. It's a fantastic turnout. We just probably needed to adjust the time. I think they'll have to discuss in the simul going forward. They're either going to need to cap it or they're going to have to add a lot more time off of certain boards. So like, hey, if there's over 20 participants, the automatic time is X, or hey, there can only be like, 20 participants or 15 or something for a 30 plus 30 because, yeah, it's just not enough time. With all these players, and that's the unfortunate part. But it's a lot of fun. Some really interesting games and positions that happened. Okay, so here's we had this one again where the pawn is under attack, right? So if there's any piece that Tommy is threatening, he has to capture the piece, right? So in this position, he is threatening the piece, meaning and of course he'd want to do it too. He'd want to take, but he's also threatening the rook. So he has to take one of these two pieces if, when it's his turn, uh, he has to take. So in this case, obviously the queen's going to move. Now he has to take the rook. Of course, in this position, it's really good. It's a free rook. But in other positions, that could be bad because the queen would maybe, if the rook was protected, the queen would have to take the rook anyway and sacrifice the queen. So that's where those could change. So again, in this position, he has to take the rook because he's also threatening this pawn. So rook takes rook has to be played, which again isn't bad for him necessarily. And then of course he gets his check here. And let's see how this game was progressing. We did get some more moves, which is great. F6 gets played, bishop E3, and the queen. The unfortunate thing is we are down material. Um, so we have an uphill battle going on here with My Son Never Calls Me. But what jcarmody doesn't realize is that this queen is actually just a big white squared bishop. It can only move diagonally. So that's something we have to keep into consideration as well. And he threatens the queen. We go grab the knight. What are we going to do here? I guess trade rooks. And then we're at four minor pieces with the big queen being the bishop. Four minor pieces against the queen and bishop. That would be interesting. So that's going to be an interesting game. Oh, and my son never called me. He had 1 second before moved. I think they were trying to give this simul jcarmody a little more time, perhaps, but we'll see. Yeah, but we're carving so little time. I know that's the problem with this. But I mean, congratulations to everyone for turning out. I mean, this is a great simul event. I just wish we have gotten Jake Harmony more time so he could play some of these games out a little better without having to go bullet mode in so many of these and still flagging someone. This one also very good for Jake Harmony. Has the advantage in this game here. Going to create a passed pawn and up the exchange, but we do have the bishop pair, so maybe those bishop pair can coordinate and do a little extra for Jonoff, but very close game there. And it looks like we're down to just 4 games left. Everything else being timed out or resolved over the board, one of the two here. So back to Silk the Wanderer. I'm very interested to see how these rooks are going to be playing because they can't move whenever they're being under attack. So how you play with these rooks matters a lot. And you got to be very careful. Oh, but we dropped the rook, and that is going to be a problem. Sacrificing into this end game. Yeah, ouch. Oh, that's too bad for Jay Carmody. It was going to be an interesting one to see how the rooks were going to handle things, but this is just going to be promotion time. The king unable to cross, and it's over. Yes, and we have a resignation by Jake Harmony there. Okay. So let's see where these moves would get played. We got the bishop coming in here, and Tommy's going to again threaten the queen. So he has to capture the queen if the queen doesn't move, which we assume it will, and it does. And now he's bringing his queen into here. The bishop comes back, and we'll see where Tommy moves. Tommy goes ahead and captures the pawn, resolving some of that. And where's the next move? We have a lot of moves. We could try to trade the queens, give a check that could maybe grab a pawn. Could force queen trade here. Kind of like this idea. Okay, we do want to save this pawn, so we're gonna ask to exchange. Though I, why don't we play that if we're gonna try to exchange? I guess I'm not sure. Hmm. Interesting one there. Okay, so we got that game. We got three games left. The closest one is this one. This is the game I hope gets played. We got the G takes H4, Bishop F6. We got H5, King F7. This game is both bliss, but now there's only three games, so I think jcarmody is going to be able to hold on with the time, but having to play those moves quick, pushing the pawn maybe too quickly. King's going to be able to probably snag that pawn potentially. So we have to be careful going here. Oh, I actually forgot we have the rook. Never mind, we're good. So king comes here, rook comes here. If the king comes back here, we get a check and move it here, and ooh, it's gonna be good. I like it. Go, Jay Comrie maybe can pull off the win against Jonoff here, looking to have a bit of an advantage. And now, with the only three games left in the play, probably be able to not worry about timing out and be able to find more of the moves. So, what do we have with Tommy? Tommy going king or bishop to f6. We get the knight just attacking the bishop. Bishop comes all the way back. The pawn starts advancing. Oh, I can already see how this is wrapping up. Yeah, the knight comes in with the check, and yeah, this pawn is wanting to promote. The knight is coming here to secure. Then maybe, I mean, you can do it several ways, probably possibly, but the rook here, yeah, okay. So knight comes here with the check, covering these squares. Then the rook comes check. The king has to come away, and then we grab the bishop. So he moves up instead. And how do we deal with that? What's the plan there? Is there a way we can? I don't think so. I think we just use the rook to go do stuff, you know. Go attack a bishop, go here, wake a check, take a pawn, see something like that. Okay, let's go see how this game is playing out because this game looks like it's very lopsided until we remind ourselves that the queen is really a big bishop in the position. So it's actually a queen and bishop against four minor pieces with the queen involved. Three bishops and a knight, technically. Very interesting position, this one, except Jonas doesn't know that and thinks he's probably just dead lost in this position. So hopefully he'll remember that there's handicaps and maybe it's not as bad. Bishop's going to have to move in this position here too. Has to coordinate with these bishops. The good news is they can defend each other. And the dark squared bishop's out of play at the moment, not a factor in the game. So with three bishops on the board, all these pawns and the knight, I think we'll see my son never call me hanging on in the game if nothing else. So let's see how it gets played out. He goes and grabs that pawn instead and then pushes the pawn. So much better idea than what I had. Um, and again, bishop is not a queen. This isn't really a thing. Even if he moves over here, they think it's a pin, but it's technically not. So we get a check, moving the king. But the nice thing is the game logic would still say that's a pin, even though it's technically not. So that helps my son never calls me in that one. So we get exchange here. And again, the queen moving like a queen, like a bishop, but he's trying to make it look like it's still a queen and not give it away that it's only a bishop. So he's careful the moves he's making with the queen. I like that. And we have queen b4 is the next move, and we have to worry about this guy here. So we're trying to offer exchange. Don't exchange. Don't exchange. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just play here. He can actually play, but you don't know that. What a good moment for a game for that one. I like that. Yes, it still makes a check like a rook, right? So that's what's interesting about it. Moves like a bishop, but with the game logic, it's still making checks horizontally and vertically. It just can't move horizontally and vertically, but it can threaten like the original queen game. So that's what makes it a little more interesting. So Jonaf here playing the moves here. We get to see exactly the line that I looked at on this one, and then we get this bishop move. Why is the bishop moving here though? Oh, because we want to check and grab it. Nice. So a sacrifice attempt. And He says, no, 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 no. I'm going here and threatening checkmate. So you have to. Oh, he blocks. I was gonna say he could stop it this way, but this is makes more sense because this is off the diagonal. So has to make that move. Block. Yep. Then coming back. Okay. Now he's blocking the check here again. Very nice. King G3. Making a pawn move. King, oh, the king is gonna walk up the board or try to. Interesting. Could also probably just try to force exchanges later here too. We'll see. Oop, and put back to rec. Hit the wrong one. Let's jump to, oh, Tommy's game ended. How did that end? How did we end this one? Oh, yes, with the bishop and take, take, and I'm going to promote. So good job, Tommy, and finishing that one. And okay, so 2 games left. We don't have to worry about the time control stuff anymore. Let me get back to where we were. Uh, Back here. And we did not get the exchange. Good. He kept the queen on the board. Again, playing it like he thought, blocking it. And then the queen can't go here to do necessarily anything. He decides to bring the bishop in, going after this pawn and threatening to take this pawn, thinking that it's protected. Good, good play by my son or call me on this one. And this is hard because again, Jonah probably thinks, oh, I'm losing and things like that. Not, but with this being a bishop, it's a little bit closer than what he thinks. For example, you can go ahead and take this pawn, right? Because you can't actually take back. But again, Jonah not looking at ideas like that probably because it's a queen, it's protected, you know? So hard to see that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But threatened. Yep. So it's an interesting one. Well, good good play there. Okay, so we get this move over the queen. Again, looking like it's defending the pawn, even though it's not. Looking like he's gonna come after the king, but he can't. So again, love how my son never called me playing with the queen, acting like the queen's really a queen, even though it's not necessarily a queen. And let's see how Jonas' game is going. I think this is the closest one for jcarmody in terms of going for a win. Okay, and he pushes the bishop back. Bishop still has to cover this square, has to stay on this diagonal, right? Cannot leave this diagonal and give checkmate. And he's going for this guy. He's like, hey, you got to move him over here. Yep, yep. Uh-oh, but now we're out of sorts, right? Don't we have this move? He does. He plays it rook g1, and now you can't block, and you're losing the bishop or you're getting checkmated. So, wow. Um, tough, tough one. Good job, Jay Carmody. Oh, I like this check idea, right? Because how do you get out of it? If you block, I can move my bishop. Kind of. Think so? So you go here. I check you again. And he does. So do we get greedy? Can we get greedy? Probably not. Yeah, probably not. But we can move the bishop out of the way now. Okay, so my son never called me. Uh, oh, we had a resignation. So again, not knowing that this is only moving like a bishop, this looks like it's ending soon. And he resigned because I think he wants to focus on beating Jonah. And saying my last game in the simul, and I want to go off on a high note and win. And I think he's going to because we have c6 now. Oh, it's not as clear. Not as clear. Difficult. c6, and then I was looking at bishop to e6. The idea being you capture a checkmate. But this pawn is also becoming a danger, right? If we get enough moves, this could be a problem as well. And Jonoff, now under the gun, we actually bank time for jcarmody. 7.5 minutes. Jonoff under a minute playing on increment. Oh, it's even this one, not quite, because you capture with the check. jcarmody, uh-oh. And we're going to lose that beautiful H pawn in this position. And yeah, this gets Jonoff maybe a bit more into the game. Maybe because this comes with the check, and that's what's very powerful. Because you need that check. The king's has to move. It can't go here because of our bishop or here. So the pawn is going to be sacrificed. And it also means that you don't have tactic stuff with the bishops lined up on the rook. And you don't have time for this stuff. So bishop takes e4 check. And I think Jonoff might get a little bit of hope here. This could be a wild finish of a game. Oh no, he plays the bishop move. He didn't see that this is a check. I think he missed it. This was a check. Oh, wow. So now Jake Harmy's doing very well. Pick what you want. Okay, and he resigns saying, "Oh, wait. I'm losing all of my pieces." So, hey, good high note to end with it. I like that. That's a great way to end the game on a win for Jake Carmody. And I'm going to message you, okay? I'm going to see if Jake Harmony wants to get on for a quick chat in the stream, but he might just be exhausted. He might just be like, I'm done. I'm so tired. Okay, Jake Harmony says he is fine. So let me bring Jake Harmony in on the stream real quick. Only thing I got to do is I got to minimize some of these things because I got to get the stream together on real quick. I forgot another thing I forgot to do. Uh, So let me get on the stream together and we'll chat with Jake Carmody. And so let's see how we do there. Get the link going and I'll invite. All right. All right. Get that link to Jake Carmody. And we'll bring him on to talk about the game, the simul here a little bit. So let's see. Hey, Jonah. Hey, you know what? You helped Jay Carmody end on a high note. It was a very equal game, close game, especially at the end. I really love that end game there, and Jay Carmody, I think, prioritized that a little bit. Um, Let me put that on to get there, and we'll see if we can get Jay Carmody on here to chat a bit about the simul. Great turnout, guys. 28 players showed up to play Jake Harmony. So much that he didn't have enough time to play all those games. Yeah, it really was. It was a fantastic one. Um, so we'll see if we can get him on here. Okay, let me change this out real quick. All right, Jake Harmony, 1 second. I just need to do some things here for you real quick, okay? But can you hear me? Your mic is say it is muted right now, by the way, Jake Harmony. So just wanted to let you know. I don't know if you knew that or not.
All right now.
Fantastic.
I
Okay,
do
I
that all the
can
time at
hear
work.
you right now. Let me just bring you in on my OBS real quick, and then
Okay.
they'll be able to hear you. They'll let me there, and awesome. So go ahead and say hi to everyone, uh, and we'll chat a little bit about the simul. 28 people showed up. What did you think about that?
Hey everybody, this was crazy. I thought I was gonna do all right on time for the beginning when I was just playing really fast opening moves, and then I chatted, glanced at the chat once in a while. I'm glad I didn't have anybody lower rated than me, that much lower rated, because I would not have noticed who I was playing against if I had to have the handicap. And I'd look over and see the chat every once in a while, and I realized I won 2 games early, and I'm guessing that those were handicaps that forced people out. And then,
I know it was for Mr. Scribbles, according to Mr.
yeah,
Scribbles. But Mr. Scribbles also gave himself two handicaps, so it was a little. I think he got lost track. So basically, he
oh,
was supposed to move 4 pawns in the first 5 moves, and he moved 2 pieces. So he that's why he resigned. He said,
oh, well, I wouldn't have minded him going still.
"Yeah,
And every so often, I'd look over at the chat, and I started to see people say, it's going to be a whole bunch of timeouts at the end. I'm going to run out of time. So,
yeah, yeah." It was a bit, the thing that really just blew me away was how fast your time just evaporated. Because when you think about it, 28 boards, you got over 20 boards with your clock running no matter what, right? So that time
right.
just. Phew. So I was telling people in the chat, I said I feel kind of bad for jcarmody because we now we know, hey, if you have that many boards, you just have to have more time. There's no way. Like 28, you just have to have more than that. 3 minutes per participant is not enough when it's that many people. And you had so many boards playing for so long. I think you timed out on quite a bit of them because of it. But I mean,
Yeah.
it was for a long time. You had 20 plus games ongoing for a lot of the simul. So that means your clock was just draining, and that's a lot of positions to look at. And I thought you did well with it. I don't even know if I could handle that many games with that low of a time and having to play that fast. And again, so many games going so long. I mean, if you didn't time out, you still had like 20 games going after like what, 2 hours,
3 hours. Yeah,
three
we
hours? I
were in it for
mean,
three.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's 3 hours now. It's crazy.
I
So
didn't guess any of the handicaps, Wargold. I recognized a few positions that had to have been handicaps, but I couldn't tell what they were.
okay, now here's a big question I had because there's several handicaps that were really interesting. I don't know if you could tell. The first one I want is my son never calls me had the handicap where their queen could only move like a bishop.
Oh, okay.
Did
I
you
didn't
notice
notice,
that?
but
Because to me, I thought he strategically played it so that he didn't give away that the queen was only able to move like a bishop. You could see when he moved it in a location where it would make sense to move it on a diagonal without giving away like, oh wait, how come he didn't play here? Like that doesn't make any sense. But he played with that handicap, so I thought that was an interesting one. Um,
well, that worked perfectly for his play style because he does all kinds of crazy
I think
stuff
it
anyway.
does.
He's used to
Exactly.
doing
Yep.
nonsense and shenanigans.
Yeah, he also
There
took
was
the
one
other
game.
handicap too. I forget what it was. What was his other handicap? He asked for two handicaps. So he played that his queen only moves like a bishop, and his other one was the first five. Oh, he has to have 5 moves in a row during the game where he doesn't make a capture, which he solved that in the opening by playing that slow, hyper modern like opening. But again, not a very good tip off for you, or in any case, because he plays those kind of weird openings anyway, right? So,
Yeah, there was one game that clearly had can't capture a bishop. I think because I had my bishop on h3 for the longest time, and it was trapped. There was no way I was getting it out, but I did, only because it wasn't taken. So it had to have. It seemed to me that had to be a handicap. There was no way they didn't see it hanging. I don't think it mattered in the game. I can't remember what game it was.
yeah, and
Oh, maybe that was the Junis game that ended
some
last.
of them have some had some really. Jonas game, I think he just had to spell fab with his first 3 pawn moves, so that's why he played that Dutch hit the f5, a6, b5. He got fab in pretty easily, but the Silk the Wanderer, his rooks couldn't move if they were under attack. So that was his handicap, which I thought was going to play more in the end game there for a second. I was like, oh, this could get really interesting how he's going to manage that. Um, yeah, I
Didn't
think
matter.
yeah, I think he did it. And then the what was some other ones that were big ones? Oh, King 12 life. His handicap was his king could only move by capturing. So that's why his king was sitting in the center all game. He could only move his king if it was to make a capture. So I thought that was a very interesting handicap. And you could tell he put all of his pieces in the center for so long in the opening and middle game. He was making sure that anytime you checked his king, he could block it, take the piece, and things like that. Um, yeah. So how did you feel about the
That was
simul?
funny.
I mean, because this was the biggest one we have had, 28. I think 19 was the previous record. So you had 28 games going, and I think even maybe a faster time control than what Wenrook's Fly did. So what was your thoughts on playing in the simul? What threw you off? What was unexpected that was like, wow, this is what I took away. I've got to change going into another one.
Yeah, I think I need a lot more time in order to play that many people
Yeah,
because I was hanging pieces left and right, and I was trying to make moves that were okay, but I couldn't even look very deeply to see if
yeah.
my one move
Well,
was fine, but if there was another
later in
move
the
that was going
game
to
you did
snatch
that,
it.
right? Later in the game, you're having to play bullet, and that's what I was telling people. I'm like, it's not shocking to make all these blunders. You have 20 games, and you're under 5 minutes in most of them. You got to like basically play bullet mode, one game to the next. So yeah, more time with all those boards. I really think that going forward, maybe we have to either cap how many boards, or hey, if there's over 20 boards, you have to have at least this amount of time, or it's just not going to work. You're going to run all these times. Were you surprised by the mental strain with all the different positions you're constantly having to look at?
No, because I didn't recognize positions. I don't see the patterns the way real chess players do. Um, I was just looking at the clock toward the end, watching it go down below 10 seconds, and I was just trying to move a piece so it wasn't
Move
hanging
piece,
any longer.
right? Yeah, move piece. Yeah, yeah. I know some people they get. I know for me in particular, you see all these different positions, you start getting different ideas mixed up. Wait, what was I doing in this game again? And again, if you're low on the clock, you don't even have time to think like that. You're like, look at the position. What's not a blunder? This move. Next one. Wait, that was a blunder. Oops.
Yep, yep. I was getting a little not upset. I didn't get upset, but it struck me that I had 10 seconds to make a move, five, and I look at my opponent's clock with 20 minutes on it, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
this is just ridiculous. I'm playing at plus 2,000 with a handicap, but it doesn't matter,
Right.
and
Well,
I've
especially because you
got
don't even
a
know what the
minute.
handicap is. He might have already resolved it earlier in the game. He might just be playing a normal chess game at that point, for all you know. So
Right.
yeah, you don't know what those are. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is if you had more time, I think the results might have been completely different because there was at least 3 or 4 games I thought you were doing well, winning or otherwise, like doing well. And then yeah, just mistakes cropped up with the time trouble. It's like, okay, well, those games wouldn't have probably turned had you had more time on the clock to keep making the moves you were making earlier on. So, but some very interesting ones. The handicaps. You'll have to look at the end of the stream. I'll post the handicaps for the players. I think there was one game that I didn't get in the commentary because I couldn't figure out which one it was. With 28 boards, it was hard to find which ones there was. So there was one game we never looked at that got played because I was able to find like 26 or 7 of them, and there was like 28 games. So unfortunately, someone's game got missed. I apologize, whoever that was. I couldn't figure out who it was. Um, we'll have to look at it later. But yeah, that was fantastic, Jay Carney, for your simul. I was really excited with the turnout. A lot of fun, interesting chess play. The handicap thing was really interesting because there were at least several games. Tommy's game was interesting. Tommy's handicap was if he was ever attacking a pawn and a piece at the same time, he had to take the piece.
Okay.
So even if his queen was attacking like a bishop, for example, and his pawn was maybe attacking your pawn or something like that, he had to take your bishop regardless. So he had to maneuver his pieces around a little bit. You might have, if you review the game, you'll probably make sure, oh, that's probably why he did it this way later, in the certain positions because he was trying to avoid or he had to do this or so it made some interesting
It
moves.
might be fun to play some of the higher rated players one on one in a 30 plus 30 with a handicap,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that you
that could
actually
be
get to see how it
something
works.
to do like yeah, in the off season or something like yeah, get say hey, I'll challenge anyone who's over say, 2000 or 2200 we'll use elo stilo, to even the odds there. And yeah, play like a lone wolf type time control 30-30 with just the one game and you can focus on that and see how that could be an interesting thing to do. Yeah. I think the elo stilo is a very interesting idea in general. I think it would work very, very well in the simul's going forward if you have more time on the clock to play all those boards or cap the board. Say, hey, I'm only going to do up to 15 boards with this time control, or I'm going to need, double the time to play
Yeah.
28 boards. But it's
Well, you
amazing.
learn
It's
something.
amazing to me that playing all those boards for like 2+ hours didn't like exhaust you. I thought you were gonna be like, I'm exhausted. This was crazy. 28 boards. Like, I'm not talking about this afterwards. I'm exhausted. I need to go get a nap.
Oh
So
no, I wouldn't miss this for the world. And I took a nap before the game.
is that right? Okay. Oh, so
Yeah.
you were pretty ready to go with that nap thing. Yeah. Awesome. Well,
I had my
guys, is there
coffee and my wife
anything
brought
that
me
you
more.
want to ask Jay Carmody about the simul? Is there any questions you guys have? It says, yeah, my handicap is fine. Oh, the game I missed was A335. That makes sense. Okay, that was the board. Yeah, that I missed. Okay, so I did miss one of those games. All right. Yeah, I
I see
couldn't.
that GNF mentioned having two handicaps.
Yeah, several players asked for multiple handicaps. Let's see, who did we have? We had My Son Never Calls Me, Scribbles asked for two handicaps. There was several players that were messaging me asking for multiple handicaps or things like that. And even some of the players who didn't require handicaps asked for a handicap. So Narwolf asked for a handicap. Sychmar asked for a handicap, I believe.
Yeah, I was watching. I was
Yeah.
watching the Slack.
Yep. So there were some other ones that were doing that. So yeah, almost. I think there was only like 3 games, 4 games maybe that didn't have handicaps. I think like Pineapple didn't have a handicap. Montague Tiger. I mean, there was only a couple that didn't have a handicap. Most of them had a handicap one way or
But
another.
here's
So
the thought. Here's the thought. The next simul, anybody does this low rated like I am, just make a rule everybody gets a handicap.
okay, yeah, and just say hey, everyone gets it regardless of what your rating is, because yeah, you're playing all these boards and yeah.
Unless you're there's got to be something to attract low rated players, but we didn't attract any of the lowest rated players anyway
Yeah,
because I
Jonah, if
didn't
that is
have.
true, that is something to do. I think if it wasn't a simul, it would be easier to do multiple handicaps. Jake Carmen and I decided that if he was going to have a handicap, he would have one for any board that he needed a handicap because he can't keep track of all the different games and different handicaps, right? So, but yeah, having mutual handicaps would be an interesting one as well, where both sides don't know what the other handicap is. And of course, you can scale more to one player if one's higher rated too. That would be an interesting one to do. I don't know again if I could do it a simul though. Maybe if it was a small simul, have like 6, 7 boards. Maybe you could keep track of your handicaps on those boards. But 28, no way. That would be insane.
Golden Retriever Chess has a question about picking games. No, Lichess just presents the next one to me. It threw me for a loop at one point because I lost a game either on time or got mated, and there were no other games ready for my turn, and it went to the analysis board, and I had to click around to find. Not, I found the link to the simul, and then I just picked one of the games and waited.
Okay,
But yeah,
got picked
it,
back up
it
and
just
waited.
runs through.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Basically, simul host has a handicap by default. Yeah. Yeah, I would find it interesting. If this again, if you had one handicap that the host did throughout all the games, I think yes, you could do that more easily. So like let's say Jay Carmody, for example, had a handicap where he had to, make 3 pawn moves on his first door. So something that he could keep track of easier. Or like my queen can only move like a rook. Okay, I can keep track of all my games a lot easier doing that. But having different handicaps in different games, I think that would be a lot. But so Jay Carmy, you're gonna probably want to do this again. Did you enjoy it?
I did, and I'm glad that it's somebody else's turn next.
And you can play against them, right? In
Yes,
assignment. Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, thanks again for everyone who came on for the event. I thought it was a lot of fun. Great turnout, 28 boards. That's the most we've had by a good margin, I believe. I believe 19 was the last one with When Rooks Fly, I believe, if I recall. So 28 is way more than that. It was a great one. A lot of high-rated players showing up to play with those handicaps, and some asking for bigger handicaps or multiple handicaps even as well, which was great to see. And yeah, we'll see you guys at the next simul event maybe or something whenever that one's scheduled. But I appreciate Jay Carmody for getting on, handling all these boards, and uh, coming up with that ELO thing, simul thing too. Or you said someone else maybe it might have mentioned. I don't know. But either way, it was a fantastic idea. I think it was a big hit. A lot of people enjoyed it. And we'll see you guys later. And Jay Carmody, hope to see you in another simul soon, maybe with more time on your clock, because that was a lot of fun. I think you did well, all considering with that many boards and everything. So that was pretty fun. So we will see you guys again next time. And thanks for tuning in, and for those watching on the video on demand afterwards. I hope to see you guys in a live one and in the chat, and we can talk the chess live in action. So see you guys later.